I'll let you know as soon as that's up and running.
Okay, thanks.
And that is live now, so we are good to go.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 582nd board meeting of the California Regional Water Quality Control Board, Central Valley Region. I'm Mark Bradford, the chair of the Central Valley Water Board. I will introduce the other board members in just a minute. We are slowly transitioning out of the COVID-19 emergency. This meeting was originally scheduled as a hybrid meeting, with some folks attending in person in Rancho Cordova and some participating via video and teleconference. However, due to facilities limitations, the meeting is now video and teleconference only. Thank you in advance for your patience as we make this transition. For people who want to listen or watch the meeting online, the board's customary website is available. We are receiving presentations and public comment online through a Zoom meeting platform. If you intend to present or comment on Zoom or think you might be interested in commenting, you should already be in the Zoom meeting room using the meeting ID and password provided by board staff, which is on the screen right now. If you've not already received this information, you can email us now at agenda5@waterboards.ca.gov. That email address is agenda5@waterboards.ca.gov. Include speaker comment in the subject line so we can follow up with you. For those in the Zoom meeting, you will be on mute and your camera turned off until it is your turn to speak. Our meeting host will then unmute you and ask you to turn on your camera if you have one. When you're done speaking and the board members have completed asking questions, you will be placed on mute and your camera turned off. I will now introduce other board members as follows. Denise Cadera of Allensworth and Raji Brar of Bakersfield, Sean Yang of Sacramento, and Nick Ovdis, also of Sacramento, and Elena Lee Reeder of Sacramento. And finally, I want to introduce for temporarily the last time, Carmen Ramirez of Atwater. Carmen's been with the board for, I think, 11 years, and she is moving on to other priorities for the time being anyway, and we hope to see her back again in the near future. She brings a lot to the board, and she will be missed. I think we've been talking about a replacement offline, so we'll look forward to that. So thanks for everything you've done, Carmen. And finally, I'm Mark Bradford, also of Sacramento. State board member Nicole Morgan is participating in this meeting and will give an update to the board a little later. I will now introduce Executive Officer Patrick Palupa, who will introduce his staff.
Thanks so much, Mark. I would actually at this point, invite if any of the board members want to say any words about Carmen Ramirez's service. I know me personally, I'm extraordinarily grateful for the 11 years that we've spent together, first as the board's attorney and now as executive officer. I'll recall, from personal experience, one of the most meaningful moments, not necessarily, the most humorous moment, but really, really meaningful and shows how far the state has come. When you were relatively newly appointed, I think it was around 2012, 2013, we were debating some complex issues related to the Irrigated Lands Program. And there were some members of the community that came up and spoke in Spanish to the board. And I remember you checking in just to make sure it was fine, double check that it was fine for you to speak from the heart on this issue in Spanish from the dais to these community members that were affected by nitrate pollution. And, that single moment had reverberations through the community. It meant a lot to them to hear you speak in Spanish to them at their level. The amount of trust it helped generate for the board and the way you spoke from the heart on that was truly important. And honestly, looking back at where we've come as a state since 2011, not that long ago, but it's a few years. I don't think, I think you helped usher in more board members who now would not think twice of doing that, but it's through small actions like that, putting yourself on the line like that in this setting, that I really believe that you helped advance, the equity goals of this board, the water quality mission of this board. And I truly, from the bottom of my heart, the humor and the kindness that you bring, and as well as the sharp wit, I really, really have treasured the time that you spent on this board, and thank you for your service. Before I get to the introductions, I want to see if anybody else on the board has a couple comments to make, because your tenure has been pretty incredible.
Well, I'd just like to comment, actually, when I got the opportunity to serve on the board and I got there, I had no idea what to expect, but there was Carmen. She was there with a smiling face. She, as you mentioned, the humor, it was a welcoming feeling to come into a place that was not stiff, and it was alive. And Carmen, she's an attorney, and she represented that area well. I mean, I was always impressed in how she spoke about issues from her area of expertise. It was definitely meaningful and made a difference on our board to have her presence. And so, Carmen, all the best to you. We certainly hope to have you back. I don't know if I'll be there, but hey, you're still young enough to serve in the capacity. The board is going to miss you. I'm going to miss you. You've been a lot to me, and the support you gave me when I first came on the board. And gosh, it's going to be empty seats there. It's going to be hard to fill your shoes. Thank you so much. God bless you on your journey.
Okay, I'd like to say a few words. I feel like I just got punched in the gut. I had no idea Carmen was leaving. Again, what everybody said, ditto. You have been such an amazing board member, and you've made this experience. For me, when I first joined the board, for anyone who's been on this board, it is daunting. There's a lot of technical material. There's a lot to comprehend, a lot to understand. And Carmen, you always have a way of taking the technical information and being able to let everybody digest it in normal terms that we can relate to. And I appreciated that very much. I mean, of course, you're smart, your intellect, your humor, your wit. You can make a go by much faster. and you have this wonderful aura about you, and just, you're such an accomplished woman, and woman of color, and I admire you, and you mean a lot to a lot of us. And what Patrick said, you being on this board is really big, and it's changed things when it comes to equity and diversity. And folks like me who look at the board and think, do I have a space here? Well, maybe I can. Carmen's here. And that is huge. And you don't know that unless you've been in those shoes. And then again, to be surrounded by folks who are from MIT, law school, Berkeley, and you're like, I'm from Bakersfield. But this is what it means to truly be at the table for your community. You've done that for so many of us. And I thank you so much. And I know so many other folks thank you, but I do not want to see you go. I want to be selfish about that. Because you're like partner, I think to sit next to you, and you make sure you keep me on your toes. And I also appreciate how you speak to our constituents who come up, and even folks that we are regulating. You always explain to them your thoughts, and you don't just pass down a regulation and leave it at that. You discuss why you came to that conclusion. While some of us don't, you explain why you wanted to vote that way, and you explain it to folks, and that is, not everybody can do it in that term. So Carmen, I know you're going to do amazing things, and I'm sure Selma Hayek or whoever will be playing you in your Lifetime movie, but don't forget us. We're here.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, don't be a stranger, Carmen. You know how to find us online. And if you don't want to make the drive, pop in once in a while and say hi. It does feel like a 1-2 punch after Carl leaving. And then I return from my sojourn and find out you're also leaving. So, we'll carry on, but it'll be a different show for sure. And somebody else is going to have to bring the fun. So I'm throwing the gauntlet down to you guys, somebody. So thanks.
That's a tough act to follow. Tough act to follow.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Thank you.
I see Nicole Morgan. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well-
Carmen, I had the pleasure and just honor of working with you as staff on Region 5. And to walk up to the podium and to see your smile, it just really, as staff being nervous to walk up there and present in front of the board, to see your smile, it just really helped me to, be comfortable. And, I so appreciate that. And then now to be your liaison, and you welcomed me back. And so just thank you. Thank you for all that you've done for the board and for the region. Just greatly appreciate it, and just really sad to see you go.
Well, thank you. Everybody, the words are really nice. This feels really good. Maybe I'll stay, and then you guys can say this about me again in a couple of years. No.
Yeah. All right. Well, I like to chime in to add to all those compliment. I think they are right on point. Working with you a little bit over a year, I think that what stood out most to me is, your big smile, your confident, and your comments on anything that came across. I think that the intellect that you bring from as a lawyer, and in the experience that really, stood out with the comment that you made. And, it is new guys like myself. And I appreciate that, especially that big smile of yours. And it's not easy to do when it's not natural. And it's obviously it's natural because I see that smile every single time when you log on or to see you in person in Fresno. So thank you so much for that, natural, I guess welcoming, facial that you give us all. And I'm going to miss that. And wherever that you gonna go to or do, I wish you nothing but the best. And we'll see you around. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, everybody. I have really enjoyed being on the board. I've been on the board as long as my daughter's been alive, and my daughter is starting, 6th grade this next week. So I've been on here for a while. I've enjoyed it. I was really intimidated when I started, and even going before Senate rules, right? The question was, how is somebody with a non-technical or science background qualified to serve? And, my response was, that I'm a smart human, and that if, that the state of California isn't made up of all scientists, and so that they should give non-technical people a chance to serve as well. And that was a really good line. And after that, I really felt not only had that been sincere, but it had been a real statement of the way things are in the state. So I've enjoyed serving, and I haven't always been able to follow along when we're talking about highly technical things. But at the end of the day, I always felt like that as the board, we were not only protecting water in California today, we were trying to fix problems from the past, because we wanted to ensure that water in California would be beautiful for the future. And I think we've done a good job. I think that other regions look to us and look to our board because we've been innovative and bold and, held a line that is an important line. We also can be reasonable, and I think we're approachable. All those things are a really big deal. And so I've been very proud to serve. And my life has just gotten so much busier recently with work and life and everything. And this was just, especially going back to in person, was just going to be one additional thing that made it harder. So I resigned and asked the governor's office to please consider my service for the future. And they said that whenever I'm ready to come back, that they would, not hold my resignation against me. So whether it's on this board or on a different board, I know the importance it is to serve. I thank all of you for serving shoulder to shoulder with me. Patrick, got tall shoulders. Nicole, tall shoulders. The rest of us in the trenches, I think we're doing great work. The staff is so nice. They really care about doing things right. And I always knew that when a recommendation came to us, I felt comfortable that I could trust it because it had been, vetted by people who really care. So from the top to the bottom, this board has been a pleasure. And even though the state of California is entering, of course, like always, very tricky times when it comes to water and climate, I think it's staying in good hands. So, like I said, maybe we can get Jennifer Lopez or Selma Hayek to step on the board and replace me. But even if it's not them, I hope that the next person that comes in, carries the ball just a little bit further. So thanks for your kind words. I'll still be around, and thanks again.
Thanks again, Carmen. And so I'll totally interrupted that normal introduction process, but it's absolutely worth it. And again, big shoes that you leave behind to fill. On our team here today, my name is Patrick Palupa, Executive Officer of the Central Valley Water Board. We have all 4 of our Assistant Executive Officers participating via the Zoom platform. Starting in the Reading office, we have Clint Snyder, Assistant Executive Officer. Down in the Rancho Cordova office, we have JJ Baum and Adam Lapitz, both Assistant Executive Officers, and Kelly Garver, our Administrative Officer. And last but not least, Clay Rogers in the Fresno office will be around as well. He runs that Fresno office. On the call as well, we have Jessica Yar with the Office of Chief Counsel, Senior Counsel, and I'm also very privileged to welcome Lori Oken, who's helping pitch out from the Office of Chief Counsel, my former boss, the former Assistant Chief Counsel here helping us out. And Chris Moskal is also from the Office of Chief Counsel representing the board. We have a number of staff working the virtual phone lines and making sure that anybody who wishes to comment on items will be able to provide their comments. Much thanks go out to them as well. Mindy Maxwell and IT team and others are all kind of pitching in behind the scenes to make sure that this, hopefully our last all virtual meeting, goes by without a hitch. I will mention, I know I've mentioned it to the board before, but the State Water Board is committed to upgrading our IT facilities so that by the time we're back scheduled to be in the boardroom in December, we will be able to meet in person. Essentially the last Zoom update was a little bit more than our 20-year-old computers in the boardroom could handle. And so they kind of conked out last week when we were trying to connect the Zoom line. We do have a room available here at the Rancho Cordova office, just in case somebody didn't get the message that we're doing an all virtual meeting. So we do have that backup here. And of course, some of our staff are in the office today. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Bradford. You're on mute.
Sorry, you're muted, Mark.
Right, so moving on, thank you, Patrick. Seems appropriate, Carmen, for you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance one last time.
Thank you. All right, so we're looking, yep, there it is. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Carmen. At this time, we're going to go through some board member communications, and I'll just lead off. I was out of the country and ill for part of this period, but I did participate in a chair's call last week it's the week before last, which mainly revolved around water supply issues rather than water quality. We had a presentation on the conservation plans that the state board is working on. So there will be indoor and outdoor conservation goals established statewide, and the indoor goals will be kind of consistent across the state. I think they were talking about 55 gallons per capita at the moment, dropping to 50 gallons per capita by 2025. And there's also a Senate bill pending, which would reduce those goals even further. And then the outdoor goals were going to be based on location and evapotranspiration factors. So that was a fairly detailed and complex presentation, but that was the gist of it. And I did bring up the issue about administrative support that Patrick and Elena and I spoke about earlier. And Joaquin agreed to take it to the next level. Whether there's any immediate progress remains to be seen, but he appreciated the input, and I believe the other chairs also had experienced similar issues. So that was about it for me. Is there any other board member communication? Somebody'd like to go first?
Okay, I guess I'll be next. It's a tough act to follow after hearing all that about Carmen. I'm still wiping away tears. Anyway, the 28th of June, I participated in the Environmental Justice Early Action Plan meeting. 13th of July, I participated in a webinar. Topic was on San Joaquin Clean Water Advocacy, Advocates Training, Community Water Center, and Self-Help Enterprise. A number of the organizations provide services. And so since I represent the disadvantaged communities, I choose to participate in many opportunities or events that I can that relates to water to help me with my understanding, as also to help me provide information to the constituents that I represent. 18th of July, I participated in the Environmental Justice Consortium. On the 20th, I participated in the State Water Board Racial Equity Public Workshop. And then on the 27th, I participated in the State Water Board Racial Equity Workshop session that was in Visalia. On August 3rd, I participated in a regionalization consolidation of water and sewer systems for disadvantaged communities. I've been working with Dr. Longley, Tri-County Water Authority, GSA, Self-Help Enterprise, and a number of experts in the area, trying to figure out the best way to deal with consolidating water and wastewater treatment in South Tulare County, and then also in the northern part of Tulare County. If we can get things moving here in the south, we can also, it could be a model for what we can do in the northern part. But just to address the issues with the money that is available, there's no reason we shouldn't look at a regional approach to address a lot of the problems and connecting all of the disadvantaged communities that are certainly in need of this infrastructure. And then lastly, on August 5th, I participated in the pre-agenda board meeting. And I think that's about it.
Thanks, Denise. I know you've been busy as always. Anybody else have any communications they'd like to share? Yes, Elena.
Hi, Elena Lee Reader. On June 15th, I went on a rice tour with the California Rice Commission. We discussed monitoring surface water, rice production, and soils. I would not have guessed it only takes 5 inches of water sustained to grow rice. And lastly, we discussed milling and storage. And I also visited the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District on June 27th. We discussed water sanitation, the history of the district, the Echo Water Project, new treatment processes since 2010, and the buffer lands. And it was really just a great behind the scenes kind of look at what happens to our wastewater after we flush our toilets or wash our dishes. And so that was a thank you for putting that together, Patrick. And I attended 2 CV salts with the environmental justice representatives to discuss the drinking water program, and we've reconciled some data. So I'll be sending my notes over to Patrick. But I did try to unmute my microphone. And Carmen, I just want to say thank you so much for being so warm and welcoming. I did not know what to expect when I got to Fresno, and you showed me everything from, where's our resting area and everything else. And I just wanted to say I wish you the best.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I'd like to meet all of you finally in person. And now I'll stop by again. This sport is still very important, and the work is still important. So I'll come by in person in Sacramento.
Good,
Yes.
great.
I could go next.
Sure.
On July 20th, I was invited by CAF, which is what does it stand for? Community Allies with Family Farmers. Was fortunate enough to be invited by them to join a small farm tour at Humus Family Farm in Kappa, about 45 minutes from Sacramento north. And it was a farm of 20 acres by a family of 5. Has been there for over 40 years. And they have over 100 crops, and selling their crops in the local market. And it was very inspiring, and to witness the fact that they started that farm with just a couple trees, and it grew into hundreds of trees. And it was very, very inspiring. However, the big concern was that the water level issue that they are dealing with locally. They were expressing the fact that the water level of their pump is at 240 plus square feet, I should say feet in depth. And right now, it's at the water level, it's at 190, if I remember correctly. And it's dropping in a historical rate, and they are very, very scared, and they're very nervous. And so they've been in contact with other agencies, all that possible that they can do to see if there's a alternative solution to it. And part of the tour is they want to make sure that different agencies and elected officials, and then there was a assembly woman that was there as well, and other few agency was there as well. And it was again, bittersweet and everything, but I had a great experience. And that kind of small farm, to me, it really, says a lot as far as, the success with the struggles that, small farmers are facing. And me being in the small farmers team, I think that there's something that we have to look more into and do what we can to help out. So that's my report.
Hey, Sean, and for the record, what was the location?
The city?
Yeah.
Yeah, the city is Capay, if I pronounce it correctly, Capay.
So the Capay Valley, that's actually in a different regional board jurisdiction.
Is it? Okay. Well, I was invited to it.
It's probably similar to some farms we have in our region, but so that's always helpful to learn about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll get in touch with Region 2 to make sure that they're aware of that contact, and we'll provide your information about the contact with the assemblywoman to the State Water Board as well, who likes to remain knowledgeable about all of those contacts as well.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Anybody else have an update? And if not, we can move on to agenda item 3, and Nicole Morgan, who's the state water board liaison to our board, will give us an update.
Good morning, Chair Bradley and members of the board. I'm happy to join you remotely this morning and provide a liaison report. So taking a look at a year review for our Division of Financial Assistance. Over the past year, the State Water Board delivered approximately $3.3 billion to California communities to boost drought resilience and increase water supplies. Water recycling and drinking water infrastructure were among the top priorities, and community drought assistance funding has quadrupled in just 2 years. On August 4th, staff held a public workshop on the proposed statewide Restoration General Order and the Consolidated Programmatic EIR. The State Board will consider adoption at the August 16th board meeting. On August 9th, State Board staff held a public workshop to provide an overview of the proposed statewide construction stormwater general permit reissuance, including proposed revisions in the response to public comments received during the March 30th through May 2nd limited scope public comment period. A staff workshop was also held on August 1st to present draft regulatory concepts for on-site treatment and reuse of non-potable water regulations. The goal is to adopt the regulations by the end of the year. Then on August 2nd, the June 2022 Urban Water Conservation Update was released. Statewide urban water use in June was 7.6% lower than in June 2020, and more than double the statewide savings in May, which was 3.1%. The Sacramento River, San Joaquin River, and Tulare Lake regions saw savings of 10%, 10.2%, and 4% respectively. On July 29th, Governor Gavin Newsom convened local water leaders for the second time in recent months to call for their continued action to drive down urban water use and help Californians make permanent changes to adapt to a hotter and drier future. In June, all hydraulic regions saw some decrease in water use relevant to June 2020. Many local utilities and suppliers set restrictions on residential outdoor watering enacted in June, reinforcing the impact of state-level actions. We continue to work with water districts on how to accelerate water use reporting and how to get more timely water use data. Tomorrow, staff will be holding a public workshop to solicit input on potential effects of the board's proposed water use efficiency standards. Many have on developed and natural parklands and urban tree health. Changing subjects a little bit here to other drinking water updates, our SAFER program, an overview of proposed updates on the drinking water cost assessment model. Staff held a public webinar on August 8th to provide an update and hear feedback from stakeholders. There is a SAFER affordability workshop being held today on the drinking water and affordability assessment. A second workshop will be held on September 20th and a third on November 1st. A report from the state auditor focused on the board's efforts to provide safe drinking water was released on July 26th. There will be an informational item on the drinking water and clean water funding programs, accomplishments, recommendations, and process improvements at the August 17th board meeting. The curtailment status for the Delta can be seen anytime on the state board's website. The state board readopted the emergency curtailment and reporting regulation for the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta watershed at the July 20th state board meeting. On August 1st, staff released Delta watershed emergency regulation frequently asked questions. So that concludes my liaison report for this board meeting, and I am available if there are any questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Anybody have any questions for Nicole? It's good to know there's so many workshops going on. I hope I get a chance to participate in some of those, and keep an eye on your calendar. Okay, thank you. Well, moving on then to agenda item 4. The public forum. Mindy, has anyone submitted a request to speak on any topic which is not on the agenda today?
Yes, good morning. I have Michael Garabedian with Placer County Tomorrow. We'll be commenting on multiple items today, but he also wanted to comment during public forum.
Okay. Michael, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you. Thank you, board members, for this opportunity. What I will be discussing on the three board items I thought I'd mention in an introductory way is the Clean Water Act Industrial Pretreatment Program. This is a program that regulates the discharges into sewer systems from significant industrial users. There are national categorical standards, and there are regulations that deal with the successful operation having interference and pass through with the waters of the sewer plant. A little bit on my background. I studied the 1969 amendments to the Porter Cologne Act in law school in 1970, and then testified on the Clean Water Act reauthorization in 1982, focusing on the industrial pretreatment program, and then went on to work for a nonprofit organization on the implementation of the pretreatment program in New York City and its 12 sewer plants, which led to my first NPDES permit renewal hearing for the Harlem area North River sewer plant, where we challenged the implementation without success, that they hadn't done it right, though later audits suggested that some of our concerns were correct. So I'm really glad to have a chance to bring up a few points about that on the 3 agenda items looking ahead. And congratulations to the retiring board members and to the dedication of all of you evidenced so far. Appreciate this.
Chair Bradford, I think you're muted.
I am. There you go. Thank you, Michael. Moving on to the executive officer's report. Prior to each meeting, the executive officer works with the executive assistant and the board's program managers to compile a report on the status of the board's programs, its staffing, and many different initiatives the board is working on. At this time, Patrick is available to take questions on this report. I don't know if you're going to present it, Patrick, this time. I know you distributed it earlier to the board members.
Yeah, so a couple reports going on today. One, just the executive officer report contains a litany of activities that the board has conducted since the 2 board meetings. I don't have too much to add there. Feel free to ask any questions. We do have the end of year report, circulated a draft of that document to all of you, and we'll be given that a couple agenda items forward in the board meeting. That's about it. We have a couple Superior Accomplishment Awards, but first I want to invite the board members if they saw anything that piqued their interest in the executive officer report.
I have just a comment in the report, Patrick. Under public and disadvantaged communities and tribal outreach, this was one of the headings that I thought was important to have in the executive officer's report. And looking at the area where the Central Valley Board and the Office of Public Participation engaged with the leadership of the Metheny Slavic Missionary Church, addressing issues of water quality, and the U.S. Air Force and their interest in taking away the drinking water because they said the levels, and I'm not sure of the contamination there, but the levels were okay, and the board got involved. Office of Public Participation met with the community and realized that that was not the case, that water should not be taken. There was still a need to provide safe drinking water. And in the end, the Air Force agreed to that. So to me, I'm just commenting that these are the kind of things that are important for the public to know. Before that was there would not have, that discussion would not have taken place, and it would not have been reveal to the public that these are the things behind the scenes that our staff members do. And it also involved the Office of Public Participation and the need to work together to address the water quality issues. Sometimes it's where it's a project and you're having to deal with it, but this was, by the way, people just raised their hands and said, we have a problem here. This is what the Air Force is about to do to us. What can we do? And the board stepped in, the staff stepped in with the support of the Office of Public Participation. And I'm just commenting how this is what this category was supposed to do: reveal how the board and staff work with the communities to address their concerns. So I appreciate it. I'm glad to see us here. And, these are the things that our staff and people do. And it's important to know how we're working with the disadvantaged communities, because their needs, they have the greatest needs. And to address the concern there and turn it around to something positive, to where the U.S. Air Force could not pull out of that situation. They did need to address the water quality and continue to provide safe drinking water is an accomplishment. So I just wanted to commend the staff for the work, as well as the Office of Public Participation. And I appreciate that this is in the report. This is what I was looking forward to see in these reports that you present to the board. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, and we'll continue to strive for those goals as we move into the next fiscal year.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. And I like the beginning of your report, Patrick, that ties it back to the strategic plan that you guys worked so hard on and what we put in place last year. So yeah, are there any other comments on the report? Okay, thank you. Mindy, excuse me. Do any interested persons submit a request to talk about the items on the report?
Yes, Michael Garabedian with Placer County Tomorrow.
Thank you. Go ahead, Michael.
There we go. Thank you, Mike Garabedian, Placer County Tomorrow. Both about this item, and then I'll comment about the annual report. I'm not sure what's in it, but both of these are vitally important places to describe what's going on with the industrial pretreatment program. As all of you, I'm sure know that municipalities that have 5 million gallons a day of water discharge or more are mandated to have industrial pretreatment program. And when I came back to California from New York, I found walking by the Bunch Creek that comes out of the city of Colfax into the Auburn State Recreation Area, I found an odoriferous area that turned out to be from the Colfax sewer plant. And so got involved there in a couple of NPDES hearings before your board to deal with especially inflow and infiltration. This board did place in an order the first inflow and infiltration operations to fix the sewer system there. We did a survey, a street-to-street survey of a potential significant industrial users, and found over 20 in the community. And at our last involvement board, we were concerned that there needed to be an investigation to see whether or not Colfax needs an industrial pretreatment program, and that was our understanding about that the board would do that investigation for the whole community. And but instead the board only required one of the industries, the only one that Colfax claims needed its own industrial sewer permit. That was the only inspection that this board, as I understand it, asked US EPA to fund. And frankly, we kind of gave up on that issue after a couple tries, and we're back now to raise concerns. An important geographical note is that the city of Colfax, both its stormwater and its sewer system go into Bunch Creek and then into the North Fork. So it's a very critical issue, and that of course is above the Placer County Water Agency intake for much of the water supply of the PCWA. So we would urge the executive officer to add summaries to that, if it may, perhaps you do it elsewhere throughout the year, but to bring up people up to date on that. Lincoln, where I live now, is very close to the 5 million gallons per day. And on the item on Auburn coming up, I will discuss that some more. So thank you, Patrick Palupa, for this opportunity to comment on your report and urge that pre-treatment become a regular part of it.
Thanks, Michael. And Patrick, do you want to comment or provide an update on that?
Yeah, certainly. You know, we discuss pre-treatment every time we update the update waste discharge requirements requiring pre-treatment programs. It's a pretty intense process. I think US EPA is going to be asking additional questions about the pre-treatment program. It is not a well-funded program, just to be completely honest. The resources have been declining, the federal resources going into that area. But you know, we essentially work with what we've got to implement as robust a pre-treatment process as possible. I will say, you know, one of the characteristics that is different with respect to California's pre-treatment and the pre-treatment as it was adopted back in 1970 is we don't operate most of our treatment facilities, our NPDES facilities, under the type of technology-based standards that were the driving factor for regulation back in the 1970s. Those are long since in the rearview mirror, at least for California. Most of the requirements for NPDES permits are water quality-based effluent limitations that require incredibly close scrutiny to the effluent at the treatment plant. It's not a substitute for the pre-treatment program, but it is a belt and suspenders approach that absolutely bolsters the knowledge that the board has of the effluent and potential upsets within the facility. So the idea behind the pre-treatment program is if you have an upset, you know, an industrial facility that's connected to the sewer system that launches a slug of nitrate, launches a slug of caustic material, of metals into the system, it can both upset the treatment plant. You know, the treatment plant is a pretty sensitive apparatus, all things considered, and it can knock out the treatment capacity of the treatment plant, and it can result in water quality impacts as that water moves through the treatment plant to the discharge point. Thankfully, we have incredibly close monitoring of the effluent at virtually all NPDES facilities, all NPDES POTWs in the region. So we'd be able to detect that in nearly all cases. That isn't a substitute for the pre-treatment program, but that is why when we talk about pre-treatment obligations, we talk about them primarily in the context of permits. Okay, so we're adopting this permit, here's the pre-treatment program, here's how they work together to protect water quality. Certainly it would be a significant investment of time if the board chose to put that into the executive officer's report. We could do that, but realistically those type of processes are handled when we update our NPDES permits. Adam, I don't know if you have further.
I do.
Yeah.
I can provide, you know, obviously there's no substitute for, you know, a rundown by the technical staff that have been working on this, but I can provide a little bit of additional background on the city of Colfax, which was provided if the board would like that. I can give you just a little bit of background on what was done out there and where things are at.
Sure, I think, you know, brief update would be appropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, this site has a lot of history. And a lot of upgrades and things have been done out at Colfax to bring them into compliance. But I think, you know, a lot went on with respect to the pre-treatment program several years ago at Colfax. And we actually had a contractor, they're called PG Environmental. They work for US EPA. Go out and do an inspection, what's called a pre-treatment compliance inspection out there. And like Mr. Garabedian mentioned, one industry was found as kind of potentially problematic, and that was the Crispin Cider Works. they had discharged a slug that had caused some concerns. So as part of that inspection, what had been done was some requirements. The city placed some requirements on them to ensure that that doesn't occur again. And kind of what came out of those discussions and our enforcement staff and others was that, you know, a full-blown pre-treatment program wasn't really needed for the city of Colfax, given what they had done with Crispin Sided Works. Colfax has put some requirements on them. They're also a very small wastewater discharge. They didn't trigger the 5 million gallons a day requirement for a federal pre-treatment program. And so, you know, staff are watching them very closely. They have these requirements. There haven't been, you know, from my knowledge at this point, haven't been those upsets caused since that time. And so, like Patrick said, the next time we renew their permit, we'll be asking these questions again to make sure that that's not needed. And I'm just looking right now to find out when that renewal is going to be. Got the permit here. Let's see here. So it looks like actually this one's up for renewal in 2023. So next year, we'll be taking another really deep dive on this facility to make sure, you know, like I said, I've given you kind of the broad background. Nothing's been raised to my attention at this point as pre-treatment issues out there. I grew up in Colfax. I went to high school in Colfax. Not a heck of a lot going on up there with respect to industry when you compare it to some of other cities, but still very important to ensure that what is there is not causing wastewater treatment plant programs problems.
Thanks, Adam. That's helpful. So, Mr. Garabedian, I guess if you have further interest in that subject, we will be reviewing their permit approval in 2023, and you're obviously welcome to participate in that and weigh in at that time.
Thank you. I'm glad to have a heads up on that.
Good, thank you. Okay, Mindy, are there any other interested parties that would like to comment?
No, there are none.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
And Chair Bradford,
Yes.
this is Carmen. I tried to unmute earlier, and all I was gonna say is to thank Mr. Garabedian for his comment earlier. You know, we haven't always been on the same side, but you know, it takes all of us to move the state forward. So thank you for your well wishes, Attorney Garabedian.
Agree, thank you. Okay, so agenda item 6, I'm going to have to defer on this a little bit since
real quick,
consideration of the minutes from the prior board meeting.
Chair Bradford, if I may, there's a
Yes.
couple Superior Accomplishment Awards to give out.
Oh,
as
okay,
a
sure.
report item.
Yep.
So I'll go to that and then we can approve the minutes.
Yep.
First, we have Courtney Kasich, who's a staff service analyst in the Reading office. Really one of the shining stars of the admin unit up there. That is absolutely top-notch. Courtney, I see you there.
Hi, Patrick.
Right. The Central Valley Water Board's Reading office management team is pleased to select Courtney Kasich for the Superior Accomplishment Award. Courtney is a staff service analyst in the Reading office and is being recognized for her outstanding performance. She joined the board in October 2017 and is a key member of the Reading Administrative Unit. The Reading Admin Unit uses 2 full-time positions, 2 part-time seasonal clerks, and its responsibilities are varied, providing invaluable service to about 55 employees who rely on the unit for facilities management, fleet management, document production and training needs, ordering supplies, and a whole host of miscellaneous tasks essential to the office's operations. Courtney is a key member of that team. She is always willing to assist anywhere anywhere she's needed, and is enthusiastic about continually looking for ways to improve internal and region-wide administrative processes. She's played a huge role in developing a highly productive and cohesive team that can quickly adapt when responding to last-minute requests or in the absence of unit staff. This ability has been demonstrated many times over the past couple of years during wildfire events, board tours and meetings, and even the COVID pandemic. Courtney's willingness to help others, along with her exceptionally positive attitude and professionalism when working with everyone she encounters, are most appreciated. She is deserving of this recognition for her work and her contributions to the Central Valley Water Board. We are grateful to have Courtney as part of the Reading team. I'll add note of personal gratitude. We're relatively short in the admin unit here in this office due to a variety of things. Some staff have retired, others are in transition, others are on long-term leave, and that meant over this past year that we needed to recruit people from other offices to help out. So Courtney stepped up and helped out as an executive assistant for a couple projects here and there. Just fantastic. Her enthusiasm to kind of jump into the fray and say, I got this, I'll figure it out. I'll get those appointments out there. I'll call the people that need to be called. And so I really appreciate all your work and congratulations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Next up
Here,
is
Patrick. It's always nice to have a team member who takes a lot of initiative and has the energy to help out when needed. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you.
Next up is Lauren Smitherman. I see Lauren. Good to see you. Lauren is a highly valued member of the planning section here at the Central Valley Water Board. She is being recognized for her efforts in leading the Tribal Beneficial Uses Project and the Mercury Program, including the reconsideration of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Methyl Mercury Control Program, all of which are high priority items and projects for the Central Valley Water Board. Lauren took over the Tribal Beneficial Use Project at a time when the tribes were unsatisfied with the direction of the project. She quickly changed the approach based on their feedback and increased the communication and transparency of the project with tribes and tribal organizations. She ensured that tribes have more opportunities to provide input and that staff thoughtfully consider tribal culture, suggestions, and perspectives in the board's approach to designate water bodies for tribal beneficial uses. She has also led the development of a tribal beneficial use primer that explains the Basin Plan Amendment process, which isn't a straightforward process, to increase the tribe's understanding of the process to designate water bodies for these uses. Through all these efforts, she has implemented one of the Central Valley Water Board's strategic plan objectives, strategic engagement with underserved and underrepresented communities. For the Mercury program, she developed a draft region-wide mercury strategy with staff to support a collaborative, effective approach to address mercury impairments while satisfying state and federal regulations efficiently. This effort is well aligned with the Central Valley Water Board's strategic plan objective of adaptive prioritization. Lauren's leadership skills have been a critical asset to creating a cohesive unit of staff that work together to solve complex technical issues while employing sensitivity towards political ones. Instrumental in the success of the Tribal Beneficial Uses and Mercury Control Program, Lauren is well deserving of the Superior Accomplishment recognition and is a true champion for implementing the Central Valley Water Board's mission. And she was a great asset when we went all the way up to Medicine Lake late last month to engage with tribal communities that have appeared before this board, talking about Medicine Lake, tribal resources, and what is meaningful to them. Lauren, Adam, Meredith, and I went up there, and her sensitivity to these issues, her ear to the concerns of the tribes was invaluable for that process and will continue to be invaluable as we work through the tribal beneficial use designation. So thank you so much, Lauren. Congratulations.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm very honored to receive this award. And I just have to give a shout out to my management and the executive management, and of course, my rockstar staff that really help drive these efforts forward. So thank you again.
Thank you, Lauren. I noticed in the executive officer report that the tribal beneficial use definitions being added to the basin plans, and that shows some real progress. And I know when Elizabeth left, you picked up the reins and moved forward in a really positive way. So it's good to see that whole tribal beneficial use program moving forward and engaging the tribes in that process is so important. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. And it's good that you're actually helping to implement some of the strategic plan as well. Congratulations to you and to Courtney.
All right.
Great, thanks.
Chair. It's all yours.
Okay. Now we'll move ahead to consideration of the minutes from the prior board meeting, which was on the 9th and 10th of June. I want to thank Denise for chairing that meeting in my absence. And I know it was a busy meeting, so that was a heavy lift. So I want to ask the board members if there are any edits or corrections to the minutes. I know I have none since I wasn't there.
I'll make a motion to approve of the minutes for the 9th and 10th of June board meeting.
I'll second. Thank you, Elena and Denise. Mindy, would you like to call the roll?
Board Member Brar,
Yes.
Board Member Ramirez,
Yes.
Board Member Yang, Board Member Yang,
He's still on.
Board Member Abdis.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, when I was trying to unmute it, it keeps saying that the host not allowing me to. So yes.
Thank you very much. Board Member Abdis.
A quick question, Patrick, since I wasn't in attendance at the last meeting, do I need to abstain or can I just vote aye on this, or what's the proper way?
In this for this matter, if you abstain, it's basically I accede to the majority. So if you know, I don't know if the minutes have ever not passed. So an abstention is basically you guys got it, and I'll be counted just for quorum purposes.
Then I'll abstain since I was absent.
Thank you. Board Member Lee Reeder.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kadara
Yes.
and Chair Bradford.
And I'll also abstain.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Let's see what we have at 10 o'clock. We have agenda item 7 is the uncontested calendar. This is a time and place for a public hearing to consider uncontested items 11 through 13. Mindy, has anyone submitted a request to comment on any of the uncontested items?
Yes, Michael Carabedian with Placer County Tomorrow would like to comment on item 12A.
Okay, Michael.
Good morning, Mike Garabedian, Placer County Tomorrow and Friends of the North Fork American River. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on the Auburn sewer plant. I would appreciate an explanation of what the staff has planned in this area, what is before the board, and what the rescission does in general terms. The concern regarding industrial pretreatment is that the North Auburn, it's a county sewer service district, I don't remember the exact name, its water is piped, it's water from that area that is piped to Lincoln. And there are several concerns about that, but the issue I will specifically mention is a question again on industrial pretreatment, and that is that Lincoln is nearing its 5 million gallons per day. Does that mean that if there is a pretreatment program in the North Sewer area that Lincoln would be managing that? This is not meant to be a comment on the regional sewer piping system, but it does, among the issues raised is how Lincoln would be enforcing a pretreatment program in the area north of North Auburn. And I just wonder if there are any observations at this point about that aspect of this rescission. It may not, if it relates to that, and the longer term question of the sewer service area evidently needing a pretreatment program. There was a special sewer plant designed for North Auburn, and instead it was piped. And that was a system. I've reviewed in your files. I reviewed the proposed facility, and it looked like a more than average, a very complex facility to deal with significant industrial users in that area. So thanks for this opportunity to bring point 2 on the industrial pretreatment program.
Right. Well, I'll get into the response to, I think, your first question. What is the board doing here? As it says on the website and on the notice, the city is now regulated under a different general order. It's regulated under the municipal general order. I believe, Mr. Garabedian, you commented on that when that action took place. This is rescinding the general order that is not used to regulate the facility anymore. So it's a bit of house cleaning is what's happening right here. And in terms of the pretreatment requirements and interplay between Lincoln and Auburn, I'll have to kind of defer to Adam on that. It's not particular to the item that's before the board right now, but Adam, I don't know if you want to just share your knowledge a little bit with Mr. Garabedian.
Yeah, so this, like Patrick said, the first thing that I want to clarify here is this is a number of Auburn's these placer plants have been closed down, and they're essentially the collection system. We've done a number of permitting actions to facilitate this collection system to move the wastewater from much of Auburn to Lincoln's wastewater treatment plant. And this rescission is actually not, this rescission is actually for their one remaining plant, is my understanding right now. And we're regulating them. The requirements in the general order are as stringent, if not more stringent, in my opinion, than the order that we're rescinding, because this order really only applies to those facilities that meet water quality objectives at the end of pipe. There's no dilution allowed under this general permit. And so that I think that's one important thing to consider here. Now, with regards to Patrick's discussion on the city of Lincoln, you're right, they are growing, and I believe they're very close to that 5 MGD right now. To give you kind of more information on that facility and what we're doing right now, I would need a little bit of time. We could take a short break and I could look into it really quick if you'd like. I will say though that this facility just like any other, it's on a 5-year renewal frequency. I need to look at when we're going to renew that permit. I think it's coming up pretty soon for renewal, to be honest with you, because I remember the last renewal was, oh boy, it was quite a while ago. So I think it is coming up for renewal. Just like I said, for Colfax, any facility that when we do these renewals, we'll reconsider whether or not, how their compliance with an existing pretreatment program, if they're under one, whether or not they need new pretreatment requirements, and whether or not they have the right sewer ordinances in place to ensure that any industrial user that's connected to their system through either the city of Auburn or through any other place, they have the authority to regulate that user if need be. And that's a requirement under federal regulation. So if we come to the conclusion in that renewal that yes, they need this full-blown federal pretreatment program because they're at 5, over 5, that would mean they have to make sure they've created the legal authority to permit and to enforce that pretreatment program. So I'm sorry, I can't give you real concrete details. I can, if you'd like me to come back and, I can do it in 20 minutes, or after Patrick gives his presentation, I can give you more specific details. But I didn't have time to look at everything right now while Mr. Garabedian was speaking, and I don't want to mislead you on any details.
I would suggest that we have that at a later hearing, simply because I double checked, and the city of Lincoln, there's a wastewater treatment plant amendment that's a pending item before the board. It's not this board meeting. I don't know if it's calendared yet, but there's been some type of application submitted to the board where we're considering matters relevant to the regulation of that facility. So since it's a impending item, pending item, we can't discuss it in more detail, but certainly when it comes up before the board, Mr. Garabedian will make sure that you receive notice of that, and we'll have a full discussion if you want ahead of time, and then at the board meeting if your issues aren't resolved by then. But absolutely committed to talking that one out.
Oh, just real quick, and I don't know, Patrick, I can say right now when the permit's up for renewal, if you'd like, if I can go that far.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it looks like the permit expires in 2024, at the beginning of 2024. So this would be up for renewal in 2024. So not too long from now. About a year.
Thanks, Adam and Patrick. Michael, do you have any additional comments or questions?
Thank you. No, in terms of Patrick's offer to look into it during the meeting, I think it would be fine for him to follow up by phone later.
Okay, great.
And just, I'm sorry, one more thing. Just in their last permit, they were required to develop a pretreatment program and submit documents for that. So we will be getting information on them if we haven't already, and can follow up from there.
Great, thank you. Okay, are there any other discussion points on the uncontested calendar? Any late revisions? Hearing none. Can I ask for a motion and a second on approving the uncontested calendar?
So this is Carmen Ramirez. I'll approve the consent calendar as presented.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Nick and Carmen. Mindy, can you do the roll call?
Board Member Brar,
Yes.
Board Member Ramirez,
Yes.
Board Member Yang,
Yes.
Board Member Avdis,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kadara,
Yes.
and Chair Bradford.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to agenda item 8, the end of year report. Does anybody need a bio break before we do this agenda item? It's only 10:15.
Let's do the bio break.
Okay, yeah, let's do a 10-minute bio break. We'll be back at 10:25. Okay, thank you.
Glad to see the presentation good there, Patrick. Good, Gene, are you back online yet?
I am, yes.
Go ahead and call this Adam. Somehow he fell off the co-host list.
Oh. Got it.
Thank you. And in a little bit, Stephanie Tadlock will need to speak. So I don't know if you want to just go ahead and co-host right now.
Got it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 10:25. Do we have everybody back? Hearing,
Carmen reporting for duty right here.
okay. Assume you're back. If you don't say you're not back, then I won't know. Yes. If you're not there, you can't say you're not there.
Sean's here.
Okay. Well, it's 10:25, so I think we are ready to move on. It's time for the end of year report. This is agenda item 8. And at this time, the executive officer will present a summary of the work accomplished by the 19 water quality programs in the region over fiscal year 21-22 and objectives for the upcoming year. This is an information item only and no action will be taken, although the board may ask questions and provide direction to staff. After the presentation, interested persons will be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board. We will now hear the executive officer's presentation.
All right, thank you, Chair Bradford, members of the board. Give me just 1 second to share my screen once again. We in good shape there?
Looks
Yep.
good, Patrick.
Good.
Fantastic. So as we know, this time of the year in August, I essentially take stock of everything that the board's done over the past year. We pour over things like financial documents, resources available to the units, the priorities that the board has approved in December, the work plans that the program managers have worked long and hard to put together. And we provide this summary of what we've done and what we plan to do to the board. It's really a kind of a check to see how we're doing and what we can do better and what we plan on doing in the future. Now, this is kind of an important component that all this information that I'm going to present here today, along with additional information about resources, about accomplishments. I'm really just going to tease out some of the accomplishments that are most relevant, but there's a lot of other stuff as well that is done. is on the board's website. Just click on Overview of Board Programs under the Program tab at the top, and all of this information for each one of these water quality programs is available to you. And last but not least, as part of the introduction, I'd also like to talk a little bit about the strategic plan objectives. I'll be talking about the achievements that we've accomplished in this past year, but I'll also be talking a little bit about how those achievements help us meet the objectives of the strategic plan that we approved last year. As you may recall, the 4 main pillars of the strategic plan are adaptive prioritization, which means that we're working on tailoring permits, enforcement, and planning actions based on threat to water quality. Strategic engagement, particularly with underserved and underrepresented communities, and internal process improvements to achieve greater efficiency, engagement, and racial equity goals. Now, development of a climate change portal that kind of aggregated all the stuff that we're doing to address climate change issues within our region, whether it's drought, water scarcity, salinity. All of that is going to be deferred a little bit because the adoption of the State Water Board's racial equity resolution triggered a lot of actions that the regional boards have to take on. So currently our team, the management team, along with the racial equity work group, is working on developing our own regional racial equity resolution. When we picked that up, we had to put something down. The climate change portal is what we put down. We will pick it up so that we can achieve it during the life of the strategic plan, which again is about 5 to 7 years. But for this year and going into next year, really racial equity requirements and the racial equity resolution for the region has taken priority there. So just want to note that the 3 strategic plan objectives I'll be focusing on are adaptive prioritization, strategic engagement, and internal process improvements. So now to get to the programs. First, the permitting programs. These are the main permitting programs. A lot of resources are committed to these areas. And first, the NPDES program. Board member Lee Reeder, you may recall this picture. This is from the Sacramento Regional Sanitation District, the regional sand plant that has been updated fairly dramatically. They're going through one last stage of updates and putting their filters in, those huge filters but this is the nutrient removal system that was recently updated, huge construction effort that went underway. The NPDES program regulates this facility, and it really is a federal program that US EPA has delegated to the state of California. And this program protects beneficial uses by regulating point source discharges to surface waters. In fiscal year 21-22, a lot of what we did was to try and help that adaptive prioritization. If any one program really reflects this, it's the NPDES program, where we're under extraordinary constraints to develop these permits, very sophisticated permits, issue these permits, and do it in a way that's protective of water quality, but that takes our resources and streamlining into account. We developed tools to streamline permitting and increase water quality and consistency, and continue to use those tools this year. That includes mid-permit reviews, templates, calculation tools, and general permit usage, which you heard a little bit about with the Auburn permit that was discussed during the public comment period, or during the non-contested calendar period. We also developed some tools to help review methods and sampling requirements that are employed by the dischargers that are regulated by this program. For the upcoming year, we continue to focus on increasing permitting efficiency, quality, and consistency. We're going to continue to conduct mid-permit reviews to identify data issues early. That means a lot to small communities, so that permittees may resolve data quality issues prior to submitting their renewal applications. We're going to implement new statewide toxicity provisions efficiently and effectively to ensure permit renewals are not delayed, and going to continue to maintain compliance with US EPA permit renewal metrics. They really want well over 80% of our permits to be reissued on the 5-year kind of time frame that the federal rules require. We have the ability to administratively continue permits. US EPA really doesn't want us doing that. They want us to have the latest and greatest permit adopted on that 5-year cycle. And our region has actually done an incredibly good job of maintaining compliance with those renewal metrics on the whole. A little easier for us to do it than other regions because we have a big team. We have a lot of permits and we can kind of move permits around based on priority. But it's a huge metric that this unit works to advance. Waste discharge to land program, and I'll stop here real quick. If any of you, any of the board members have any questions about any of these programs, have an interest in kind of developing your knowledge base on any of these programs, take notes, talk to me afterwards, and we can kind of expose you more to some of these issues that all of these water quality programs take on a day-to-day basis. Waste discharge to land program. This is the program that primarily regulates waste discharges that affect groundwater quality. The oldest state water quality control program, regulates sewage treatment facilities, food processing facilities, and other industries. About 1,400 facilities are regulated under this program. This past year, we adopted 10 brand new individual permits, enrolled 64 facilities under existing general orders, reviewed numerous proposals under the salt and nitrate control programs. And this is a key one. It advances several of our strategic objectives in terms of, particularly in terms of engagement. We advance the goals of septic to sewer consolidation programs under SB 1215. SB 1215 is a septic to sewer financing program, and really to set the groundwork to make those projects work. A lot of communication has to happen between both the communities that are looking for new sewer options because they've got failing septic systems, and also the communities that propose to take those systems on. A lot of communication. Sometimes there's some animosity there that has to be broken down as we work towards a kind of a sustainable vision in the valley. That's one of the main projects, little project under the waste discharge land program that has received a lot of attention this past year. That's Los Olvidados Park, small group that is going to be connected to the Fresno Clovis wastewater treatment facility if everything goes according to plan. For the upcoming year, we want to continue to prioritize CV salt's implementation, continue to conduct stakeholder outreach and include underserved and underrepresented communities during the permitting process, and to develop new region-wide general orders. This is a huge streamlining initiative to reduce backlog, increase consistency, and those include a large domestic wastewater facility general order, a nut hulling and general order, and a food processor general order. Water quality certifications program. This is a program that protects wetlands, riparian areas, and headwaters by issuing certifications that have enforceable provisions to ensure that federally permitted projects meet state water quality requirements. In 21-22, we engaged tribal members to explain application and permitting process. That's one of the strategic plan objectives. We participated in the development of a utility wildfire mitigation general order that the state board is working on developing. We developed a general permit to regulate maintenance dredging activities. That's next up on your agenda today, and participated in a number of program-related trainings, including wetland delineation training. And that it kind of speaks to internal process improvements. I will note, and specifically to this last bullet here, that training is crucial in the water quality certifications program, particularly because this is a fast moving area where the regulations feel like they're changing year to year. A lot of that has to do with kind of federal court cases. Some of that has to do with changes to federal regulations. If you heard about the Waters of the U.S. controversy, water quality certifications program is front and center in taking those issues on, and frankly, ensuring that whether it is a water of the state, not subject to federal regulation, or whether it's a water of the a federal jurisdictional water, that those water quality protections are maintained, whatever status those waters get. That's a kind of cool feature of California law. We will make sure it is protected regardless of whether it's jurisdictional or not. We're also within this program focusing on streamlining and simplifying the permitting processes. That promotes efficiency, but it also promotes engagement. When you have members of the public that don't understand what the permitting process is, it's hard for them to engage, and it's hard for them to kind of speak to what concerns this project may raise for their community. So when we simplify the permitting process, when we make it more transparent, we also find that we promote public engagement in decision making. We continue to focus on targeted inspections, 10% of regulated sites. That sounds like a small number, but a lot of those facilities are kind of dormant, inactive. You go through and you build in one surge, and it's those kind of threats to water quality that we want to work on. And last but not least, we have a little bit of resources coming in from Caltrans to help streamline permitting of Caltrans projects. It seems like a distant memory, but SB1 actually put a lot of money into Caltrans to improve the state transportation infrastructure, whether it's bridges, roadways, mass transportation, highways. There's a lot of work that Caltrans is working on to improve the state, infrastructure. A lot of state infrastructure touches areas that could have impacts to water quality. They have to get permits from us. They have to get permits from State Board. They have to get environmental documents reviewed. So to expedite some of those projects, Caltrans is helping us out by providing us and a few other regions some resources to help with that process. The stormwater program. This implements construction, industrial, and municipal permits to regulate the discharge of pollutants in stormwater to waters of the U.S. We've got some fiscal year 21-22 accomplishments up there for you. I will note, as we kind of assess our stormwater program and talk about racial equity goals, to talk about the goals of the strategic plan, the stormwater program statewide is often dealing with sites within disadvantaged communities, within communities of color, largely due to land use decisions that were made a long time ago. So when we do inspections of industrial facilities, when we make sure that they're not impacting their neighbors and their communities, a lot of those industrial sites, are located in communities of color. So we have to, when we're going out and we're taking a look at what our slate of inspections are, a lot of those 800 plus inspections and audits are happening, disproportionate share are actually happening in communities of color and disadvantaged communities. So finding a way to communicate that and to increase the scrutiny that this program puts on those sites is a big part of meeting both the goals of the strategic plan and the statewide racial equity goals that are articulated in the racial equity resolution. We also, the stormwater program has participated in multi-agency trash cleanups and waterways. It's supported water quality mitigation efforts in wildfire impacted watersheds. Some of our stormwater folks are most knowledgeable on wildfire too. So we kind of swap those resources in and out. And last but not least, we began revising our region-wide municipal stormwater general order, a huge undertaking. It's back on the 5-year clock to be renewed. Big effort that will be beginning, that began in 21-22 and will continue into fiscal year 22-23, as you see from the third bullet there. For the stormwater program, we also anticipate maintaining a strong field presence through inspections and enforcement, continue to work with MS4, that's municipal sanitary sewer systems, or separate sewer systems, permittees on development, review and approval of stormwater quality management plan elements. That also kind of segues into the fourth bullet there. We want to also look to strategies to capture municipal trash and hopefully promote watershed level trash cleanups. We have some MS4 entities that are really engaged on this issue, trying to engage with State Board as well to look at those trade-offs and putting resources into those watershed level trash cleanups efforts. And last but not least, you'll see the pyrethroids control program pop up here and there. A good portion of the pyrethroids control program deals with urban waterways that are often impacted by MS4s. So the MS4s are continuing to support implementation of that control program in their systems. I'll pause there for a second before we head into planning, monitoring, and assessment, see if there's any questions.
Yeah, Patrick, I have a question. I think when I did a tour up in Reading that Clint led, and he was discussing the trash cleanup of waterways. And if I recall, he said that there isn't a provision for those activities to be funded and that instead it required mechanical removal technologies at the wastewater treatment plants. I'm wondering, is that accurate? And is there any prospect for, getting some of those actions funded so they happen more frequently and be more organized?
Yeah, so that is exactly kind of what we're touching on with respect to that particular concern. What Clint's talking about there is the fact that the statewide trash TMDL requires that MS4 permittees have complete capture of trash within their system, or an alternative, a complete capture alternative that basically gets to the same zero trash coming out of the MS4 system into waterways. Now, there are some partners out there. City of Sacramento is one of them. City of Reading, some of the facilities up there are another. I think Fresno expressed some interest in this as well and said, look, can we find a way to have an offset, to have perhaps a longer compliance timeframe for installation of kind of the concrete capture systems within our networks? Because really what we want to do is maybe defer that a couple of years, because the MS4, we might be contributing a couple tons of trash into the waterways. Not good. We will solve that problem, but there might be a problem that's 10, 50 times worse in the encampments that are developing along our sensitive waterways. Isn't it possible to get an offset, for that trash TMDL? We'll fund that removal if we get some time credits for our full capture system, which are really, really expensive to implement and really don't get to the majority of the trash issues in our waterways. We're working with State Board to try and put that proposal on the table. We've put it out there before. It hasn't gotten a lot of traction. I know Tam was a proponent of it. We're going to keep pushing on that. I know it takes a lot of trust to kind of engage on that, because the trash TMDL was a hard-fought win for a lot of environmental groups in front of the State Board. We think that this also could be a win, but that's really the core of the issue there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that answers my question at this point. Thanks.
Yeah, can I just say, Patrick, thanks for bringing that up. I mean, living next to a drainage corridor, I'm reminded constantly of the amount of trash from illegal encampments that makes its way, into the American and Sacramento rivers and ultimately into the Delta, into the ocean. It's a significant problem, and I would hope that the State Board keys in on this particular issue and opportunities to help mitigate some of that, because that trash right now is unmitigated, and year after year it's a constant stream that's ending up in our waterways in the Delta and the ocean. So anything we can do to move the needle even a little bit, I think, is something I'm very, very interested in.
Yeah, I'll absolutely note that. I'll kind of and this is a personal take on it, is that when we fail to kind of come up with creative solutions at the front end, this just gets uglier. And when it gets uglier, it means that there is more kind of animosity directed towards the unhoused people that are in desperate situation and are living outdoors near the river. And the higher the temperature grows on that issue, I don't think it serves any of us. It doesn't serve the communities that are looking for long-term housing solution for that community. It doesn't serve the community themselves. And so I think there's lots of ways, we need to find creative solutions to this, because it is a water quality issue. Less on the E. coli, I can kind of get to that in a little bit, but certainly the trash is a big one. And our teams have gone in there, and the answer for a lot of times is those folks who are living by the river, they want to help clean it up too, I think it's a complicated field, but that's something that we're absolutely sensitive to. Try and find some creative solutions at the front end, so this issue doesn't get worse, and frankly, so that we can keep the temperature lower than it is right now on the conflicts between the communities, the unhoused, and municipalities trying to deal with that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And Patrick, the city of Merced has a couple of big creeks that go through it. And we've had similar issues, right, where the city struggles with, you know, do you acknowledge these illegal encampments by providing trash receptacles and therefore, you know, almost like condoning that camping is going on there, or do you not? And then you have all this trash that you know is ending up in the waterways. And so City Merced has come up with a creative solution, and it's I mean, it's not going to work everywhere, but the mayor has started this, you know, this kayak club where, you know, every other weekend there's volunteers and they're out there and they're getting shopping carts and garbage and things. I know that won't work everywhere, but you know, I guess I just want to say that this issue is affecting small communities, certainly, you know, big places like the Delta too. So there are some creative solutions that are happening, but you're right, they're not funded, they're volunteer based, and they're not, you know, they're not sustainable long term, because if people are not willing to give up their weekends forever, then there's no solution. So I mean, I don't have an answer either, but you know, Merced's trying to solve the issue too.
Well, we got to keep pushing. I mean, I think that's one of the ones I certainly hear it from the board itself, and frankly from staff too, and from my neighbors for that matter. That this is a big issue, and we have to continue to try and find creative solutions here. All right, I'll move right ahead into planning, monitoring, and assessment. You know, if you keep track, there's actually kind of 21 water quality programs, because it includes both the TMDL program, which is kind of a sub-program under basin planning, and Delta program is kind of fits that as well. And then, of course, CV Salts was a sub-program of the basin planning program, but we broke that off and deal with that a little separately because the scope of that project grew tremendously. So that's but without further ado, I'll get into the details of these programs. First and foremost, basin planning, overall basin planning program. Water quality control plans, or basin plans, provide the foundation for all Central Valley Water Board regulatory actions. TMDL Delta programs also fall within this basin planning program, which also gives the resources to CV Salts. In 21-22, and again, highlighting impacts that are consistent with our strategic plan, added the tribal beneficial use definitions to the basin plan. Really big milestone, a lot of work to come, but really big deal there. The basin planning program also developed a region-wide assessment work plan focused on evaluation of biostimulatory and biointegrity impacts. And this is something that the state board is working on. It sounds very complicated, and it is, but those are the biostimulatory. When you see that, think HABs, think kind of eutrophication, think a lot of the water quality issues related to dissolved oxygen. It really has to do with the type of nutrients, the type of biological systems that are supported by our waterways. So there's a region-wide assessment work plan that we developed in collaboration with the state board as we work on trying to kind of bring our basin plan into the 21st century type of regulatory approaches here. We also completed the 2021 triennial review process, where you, the board, kind of voiced support for the projects that you want to take on over the next 3 years, and we're hard at work on all of those. For the upcoming 22-23, we're going to continue to allocate resources to implement CV Salts, implement the region-wide biostimulatory and biointegrity assessment work plan that was developed last year, and continue the regulatory process to add the TBU definitions to the basin plans. If you recall, through the basin planning process, approval at the regional board is the first step. It has to go through a couple more steps, off to state board, off to Office of Administrative Law, sometimes to US EPA as well. And we also plan on developing basin plan amendments to actually designate water bodies for these tribal beneficial uses. And that requires a lot of listening to what the tribes have to say about their historic practices and what's important to them. In TMDL, the TMDL, or Total Maximum Daily Load Program, simply put, it's a program that addresses water quality impairments by conducting a regulatory exercise to allocate remedial responsibilities, so who's responsible for this pollution, to everyone that is contributing to the water quality problems. And so a lot of what the TMDL program does is help implement the TMDLs that we've already approved. You know, pyrethroids came up earlier in the MS4. There's consultation between the MS4 program and the TMDL program to understand these requirements. The TMDL program also was integrated into the 2020-2022 integrated report. That assessment of where are there water quality impairments in surface water bodies in our region. They worked on priority TMDL implementation for pyrethroids, dissolved oxygen, and salt and boron TMDLs. We continued data analysis and strategic reconsideration of the delta methylmercury TMDL. That's what Lauren Smitherman is in charge of. She works with Meredith on that. It's one of the reasons she got her Superior Accomplishment Award this morning. And continued implementation of the pyrethroid TMDL, and that came up again in the MS4 stormwater context as well. 22-23 priorities are continued implementation of these existing priority TMDLs. TMDLs are usually not something that are dealt with over a year. They can take many years to implement. Develop decisions for the 2024 integrated report and update the 303D list. Prepare for the 2026 integrated report. The integrated report, it's you know, painting the Golden Gate Bridge, right? As soon as you're done going one direction, you got to get right back at it. So we completed the 2020-2022 integrated report. We're already back on it, working for the 2024 and starting to set up the infrastructure for the 2026. We're going to continue implementation of the pyrethroid pesticide TMDL control program. And last but not least, and this is important to kind of achieve, you know, strategic plan objectives, revise the Clear Lake nutrient TMDL. That's an important one because we consider ourselves absolutely to be a science-based organization. When the science for our regulatory actions turns out to, I won't say be wrong, but subject to revision, we have to go back in, get our hands dirty, and revise some of the conclusions that we've made in the past. Clear Lake and the nutrients that are driving harmful algal blooms and other issues at the lake, that's a prime example. We thought it was primarily driven by sediment coming into the lake. It looks like it's also being driven by sediment and nutrients that are already in the lake. And so we may go back and revise that TMDL to try and address those particular water quality issues. Next up is the Delta program. Really, the Delta program is driven by the Delta Regional Monitoring Program work, the Delta Nutrient Research Plan. We had a 2014 Delta Strategic Plan. Most of those objectives are met, but we're looking on kind of revising that and kind of incorporating. And really, the most of the work of the Delta program is within the Delta Regional Monitoring Program, working with stakeholders to make sure that they're monitoring for the right stuff at the right place, consistent with permit requirements. And a lot of the Delta Nutrient Research Plan, you know, centers on harmful algal blooms, which really impact some disadvantaged communities of color. You see there, that's actually the Stockton waterfront, that green color, that is not a healthy water system. You see in the inset there, that is the HAB incident reports map. There are a lot of Delta waterways that are at best in the caution area. At worst, there are a couple that are clicking into the danger area, and some, you know, that Stockton one I think triggered a warning, which is a pretty big deal. You know, the water bodies are impacted by harmful algal blooms, and you know, at the danger level, they're potentially impacted by toxic algae and other stuff that can cause pretty significant water quality impacts if you drink that water, if you let your pets go into that water. For 22-23, we're going to continue to implement the new Delta RMP structure. You approved an amendment not too long ago that restructured the Delta Regional Monitoring Plan. And we're going to continue to implement the Delta Nutrient Research Plan. A lot of that is linked to data analysis of existing studies and the development of new studies on nutrients, harmful algal blooms, and harmful algal bloom toxins. Next up, CV Salts program. CV Salts, again, a lot of these are our strategic plan objectives, basin plan amendments. A lot of the benefit of the CV Salts program is felt in disadvantaged communities and communities of color. especially because of the drinking water program and the early action plan. We provided a lot of oversight of the early action plan and management zone activities in 21-22. We helped guide the development of the prioritization and optimization study, which is the big long-term salinity plan for the valley. And we engaged in stakeholder activities, including regular meetings with environmental justice advocates. And that includes some of the meetings that you, the board members, have had and participated in. Denise and Elena, both of you have been integral to that process and talking about drinking water, talking about data reconciliation. And just, for the record there, that shows the inquiries into the CV Salts drinking water program by each of the management zones that's implementing early action plans. So, a little over 4,000 inquiries and a lot of success in kind of getting wells tested and households receiving bottled water. So for fiscal year 22-23, we're going to build on that success, ensure that program requirements such as the provision of replacement drinking water is met, serve as liaisons to a lot of the stakeholder implementation meetings because this is still a new program. And this includes a lot of hand-holding for management zone support meetings, a lot of learning from the management zones about the issues that they're taking on, a lot of listening to the communities and to understand whether their needs are being met. We're supporting the enforcement efforts. You'll hear a little bit about that later during the enforcement kind of component of this. And we're going to continue to coordinate and participate in stakeholder meetings and public outreach events. For the SWAMP program, the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, the 21-22 accomplishments include, I mentioned this a little bit earlier when we talk about encampments of unhoused people. Phase 1 of the bacteria source identification monitoring in the Lower American River largely found that the encampments were not to blame for the E. coli numbers that we saw in the Lower American River. Not saying it's not a pressing water quality issue, it absolutely is, but certainly a welcome to kind of diffusing some of the tensions within those systems. A lot of geese are kind of some of the main culprits there. Whole host of issues associated with that as well, but it diffuses at least some of the tension dealing with the unhoused people living next to the river. Summer recreational beneficial use assessments in the Delta, Upper San Joaquin River and Lower Kings River watersheds speaks to the strategic engagement goal of a strategic plan goal, because a lot of that are communities that are underserved communities use those rivers to recreate in. We have to make sure that we get out there, monitor them, and understand whether there are water quality risks involved with recreating in those rivers. The harmful algal bloom program activities, and the development of partnership monitoring programs. That's our staff meeting with folks from the city of Stockton, not from the city itself, but community members, teaching them citizen science, showing them how to conduct harmful algal bloom monitoring, engaging with the communities, helping them build their knowledge, helping them contribute to our overall monitoring goals. Fantastic work being done by that program. And last but not least, post-fire water quality monitoring in the Caldor fire burn areas. Unfortunately, that is not going away anytime soon. We're going to contribute our monitoring to those efforts and those assessments. We're going to continue phase 2 of the bacteria source identification in the Lower American River in 22-23, continue to support the harmful algal bloom program, recreational beneficial use assessments, provide lab contract support for Delta Regional Monitoring Program efforts, update maps. We're going to try and make those maps and data portals even more accessible by investigating additional languages that they can be translated into, and support the long-term trend monitoring project in the Sacramento River watershed with DWR. Some of these long-term trend monitoring really, really important for understanding climate change impacts within our water bodies. And SWAMP is at the forefront of developing that data set so we can talk with DWR, other regulators, the legislature about what the impacts are due to climate change for our water bodies. Going next to the non-point source program, it's a non-point source pollution is the leading cause of water quality impairments in California, if not the country as well. And the non-point source program, they leverage limited grant funds to work to restore water quality in areas impacted by non-point source pollution. Really what they do is they take the little grant money that's available and try and leverage that as much as possible to get some work done. They participated in the Clear Lake Blue Ribbon Committee and helped identify funding for watershed projects within that watershed. Completed the Clear Lake Harmful Algal Bloom Environmental Driver Study that feeds into the potential update of the Clear Lake TMDL. And we developed a North Complex Wildfire Post-Fire Report and Summary Report on the potential effects of prescribed fire on water quality. These are some of the fire scars here. I believe this is Ponderosa, and this next one here, I believe that has to be the Dixie Fire. So that's one of the areas that I know Board Member Yang, you toured with us. We saw the devastation caused by that particular fire. And non-point source program for the upcoming year, TMDL implementation. That's the TMDLs that you can see there, covering pesticides, salt and boron, dissolved oxygen, and pesticides and selenium. Post-fire erosion and sediment control, Dixie Fire, and implementation in the Battle Creek watershed. And to manage grants, managing a grant is not a low investment of resources. We have to do a lot to make sure that those grants and the strings that are attached to those grants are met. All right, before I go into the administrative program, I'll pause there and see if you have any questions for the assessment programs.
Patrick?
Yes.
I don't have no questions. Just want to comment that there's a lot of programs out there, which is great. I just love the fact that with all these programs are targeted to help out the general community. And we always put an extra focus on the disadvantaged community and the community of a color. And that's the equity work that we strive to better going forward. So I just want to applaud that. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you for your support in those ongoing efforts. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Patrick, I just have just a brief comment on the programs that you've mentioned that have an impact on the disadvantaged communities, and know full well that the staff is doing everything they can to address this. But I'm just reminded of the 50-year Clean Water Act provision, and what we talked about during the WQCC sessions earlier this year, and just wanting to reaffirm that we're going to be doing everything we can to address those impacts. That the priority, that they be given priority, because over the years we've not seen that happen in the way that improves the quality of life there. We still have those issues. So I know that the staff is doing their best, but as representing the disadvantaged communities, I just want to see the progress be ratcheted up a notch to improve that. I know the community outreach and all those things are underway, but addressing the communities, disadvantaged communities, and their issues that impact them are critical. And we want to see those improvements happen in the next 50 years. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I know they didn't record those WQCC comments because they want to promote, a candid discussion. I wish yours and Justice Roby's were memorialized, because I think they were really important. I think what, Denise, what you were alluding to is in discussing, the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, we also can't ignore the fact that the Clean Water Act did not touch some of the most environmentally polluted areas of the country. It does not reach those groundwaters that are not connected to surface waters. And so, Denise, to kind of elaborate on that comment that you made, Denise's kind of challenge, I suppose, to all of the assembled board members from all the regional boards, from the state board, was to continue to focus efforts on the Clean Water Act's goals, but make sure that those goals were felt in areas that weren't necessarily benefited by the 50 years of the Clean Water Act. So we're absolutely trying to do that. I think as we get into the discussions of our special permitting programs, you'll see a little bit more of that, because a lot of those permitting programs really do address groundwater, really do address those communities that are dependent on groundwater as their source of drinking water. But certainly you even saw, flavors of that within the water quality certifications program, where they're branching out, and thanks to state direction, looking at impacts in non-federal jurisdiction waters, making sure that those are accounted for as well. Right.
Thank you, Patrick.
Certainly. The administrative program, one I work quite a lot with. Kelly has shouldered an incredible burden working as a program manager here. There's a lot that the administrative program does behind the scenes. I know I've heard from the board, you want us to support them any way you can, because everything that we do here, the administrative program is the backbone of nearly all of that. We've got about 250, 260 permanent employees, 40 or more temporary or part-time employees. And of those, about 18 serve as our administrative section. So we've got a huge workload associated with what they do. What they've been doing over the past year is updated the office procedure manual and administrative support intranet web pages so that they have, especially for staff that are spending a lot of their time telecommuting, we want to make sure that those intranet web portals are available to them so they can get the forms they need, so that they can get the answers that they want in a very concise and effective way. Modernized procedures for California Integrated Water Quality System data management support. The state board pulled back some resources in that area, some IT resources, appropriately so, and that left it to our administrative team to really pick up the slack there and help out with that project. 100 requests for personnel action, probably a little over that. Now, requests for personnel action are not simple. So when you have an employee separate from the regional board, when you have a new hire, it's called a request for personnel action, a promotion. It's a pretty detailed process to get all the I's dotted, T's crossed. Administrative program handles nearly all of that. They efficiently processed and reconciled 916 employee training requests and assisted technical programs in the production and remediation of over 900 web accessible documents. So, nearly all the documents that you see up on our website have been ADA remediated. I know a lot of them didn't quite make the cut, so our board lost some historical documents, but the admin team has been going overtime to make sure that we have a huge body of our documents updated to the new web accessible format so that it can stay on the website consistent with state law. For 2022-2023, they're continuing to facilitate the return to the office as we kind of adapt to the hybrid work environment, collaborate with the Division of Administrative Services and the Department of General Services to adjust space utilization in our regional offices. It's a long way of saying that the DGS, they pay the rent for us. They want our footprint to shrink. We are going to have a lot of our staff, if not the vast majority of staff, working in a hybrid work environment. Most of their days will be spent in their home offices with just a few days coming into the office, usually a couple days per week. And so adapting to that new workspace will fall largely on the administrative program to work out those particular issues. I work very closely with Kelly and her team to try and plan for that. And last, engage with the State Water Board's Racial Equity Work Plan with respect to the recruitment, retention, and engagement of diverse talent within the organization. Huge goal, a lot of responsibility on their shoulders for that. I'll go right into the special permitting programs. And first and foremost, I know Board Member Avdis and Board Member Yang were at this particular engagement session. We conducted an in-person listening session for small, highly diversified farmers. Those efforts are certainly ongoing. Meet the strategic objectives of both strategic engagement and streamlining and permitting efficiency. We approved ILRP exemptions for the Goose Lake subwatershed and for solely managed wetlands to kind of lessen the burden in those areas where we did not see water quality impacts. We approved groundwater protection values. You heard the presentations at prior board meetings about the development of those. Those will go into the groundwater protection targets. We approved 10 surface water quality management plan completions. It's a big deal. That's when a problem is acknowledged by a coalition They figure out a plan to solve the water quality problem, and then they demonstrate to the regional board that it has been resolved. And last but not least, expansion of the on-farm drinking water well monitoring program that has resulted in over 10,000 wells within the irrigated lands program being monitored, particularly for nitrate pollution. For 22-23, we are going to continue to approve the groundwater protection targets and updated groundwater quality management plans, implement the salt and nitrate control program, and initiate a contract to fund UC Extension small farm advisor outreach to small, highly diversified farms. That was part of the outgrowth of that meeting that we had with those diversified growers down in the Fresno area, and continue to work on an alternative irrigated lands regulatory program framework for low-risk commodity types, which would ease the burden on those growers that are not really causing significant water quality problems. The oil fields program. So most California oil production occurs in the Central Valley. Formation water produced with that oil, known as produced wastewater, comprises the largest volume of waste generated by oil production. That's typically very saline water and disposed of by land application in ponds or by groundwater injection or underground injection deep into the aquifer from whence it came. So in this 21-22 accomplishments reports, we enrolled a lot of facilities under general orders. Keep on doing that. We approved 5 pond closure plans. Those are fairly significant to kind of cut off the threat to water quality. Conducted 67 inspections of these facilities, which can be massive. So it's a big undertaking there. Issued various orders requiring operators to assess whether injected fluids have migrated outside of approved boundaries. And specific to this program, they reviewed aquifer exemptions, issued 65 underground injection control project review letters, reviewed multiple well stimulation program applications, groundwater monitoring exclusions, and groundwater monitoring reports. Some of that done under the UIC program, some of that done under the SB4 program, Senate Bill 4, which triggered new requirements for fracking, steam flooding, and other oil field operations for enhanced recovery. Upcoming year, we plan on closing more inactive ponds, pursue appropriate enforcement for oil field related violations, review pond facilities that threaten beneficial use waters, review aquifer exemptions and propose UIC, that's underground injection control projects, and review the well stimulation project applications, request for exclusions, groundwater monitoring programs, and monitoring reports to protect water quality. The legislature actually gave us more resources in this area, so figuring out to effectively deploy those resources to protect water quality within this program is going to be a challenge for the new program manager in this area. Alex Olson's doing a fantastic job working through this complex regulatory area. One of the few areas where there's new program managers taking on these projects. Then we have the land disposal program that really regulates land discharges of solid and liquid waste to prevent water quality impacts. What we're talking about here is landfills, evaporation ponds, and composting facilities, the bulk of what they do within this program. The goal, protect water quality, complete protection of water quality, install these liners, install these layers to make sure that these wastes in place in these units don't leak to water quality. This program, which is a highly technical program, completed internal workshops to facilitate discussions about programmatic issues and to foster staff interaction, particularly as we're dealing with kind of the virtual workplace. Developed standard operating procedures for permit revisions and designated new review processes for new wastewater management units, and got 12 individual permits adopted by the board. A lot of these speak to the strategic plan objective of internal process improvements. And then some of what's happening in the upcoming year really speaks also to strategic engagement, but especially that kind of third bullet there, where using available data, including Cal EnviroScreen, increase outreach during permit revision process, especially to underserved communities out there that may be interested in what this program is doing. And revise permit requirements based on threat and complexity, and then also work on those on maintaining those internal process improvements to increase efficiency of our permitting. Confined animal facilities program. So This is a very intensive inspection-focused program. These deal with cow facilities, steer facilities, sheep, goats, pigs, and poultry. These are ranches where livestock are held and provided food for a significant part of the time. They also tend to generate a lot of wastes that have impacts to water quality. They conducted 321 inspections this past year, issued formal enforcement orders for off-property discharges and for over-applying to land application areas, both of which can cause nitrate impacts to surface water bodies, to groundwater. Reviewed and commented on several remediation work plans from dairies who are located in areas of shallow groundwater, putting them at higher risk of water quality impacts, and participated in CDFA, that's a California Department of Food and Agriculture's grant program for dairy digesters to reduce short-lived climate pollutants like methane that are produced by dairy facilities. In 22-23, we want to maintain that robust field presence, participate in the State Water Board's review of the Dairy General Order, which will inevitably require us to do a lot to revise our dairy program, and prioritize enforcement against unpermitted off-site discharges of waste and violations of monitoring programs and nutrient management requirements at dairies, full coverage poultry facilities, and full coverage bovine feedlots. All of which can protect water quality, particularly in those communities that utilize groundwater as their source of drinking water. Again, none of these facilities are actually within the reach of the Clean Water Act. So Board Member Kadara, our focus in this program is kind of making sure that these facilities are also protective of water quality. The mines program, also always near and dear to my heart. These are some of the toughest water quality problems in the state. Every mine is a little different. The mines program in fiscal year 21-22 inspected 23 mines to assess site conditions and compliance, assist with permit development, and monitor construction activities. They utilize an updated approach to rank water quality threats posed by mines. Since 2021, staff have used the updated approach to rank 44 of 105 mines, again, completely in line with our strategic plan objectives of streamlining, increasing efficiency, and also targeting those water quality problems that present the greatest threat to water quality. We continued engagement regarding the proposed venture to reopen the Idaho, Maryland mine in Grass Valley, a very controversial project. We're reviewing environmental documents and having discussions both with the people that are putting the proposal on the table and with those community members that are very concerned about potential water quality impacts if the mine gets the approval from the local government to reopen. And we're going to make sure that if they do, there are not water quality impacts associated with the reopening of that mine. Next up for the mine program in fiscal year 22-23, Sulphur Bank. This is an old mine, an abandoned mine on the shores of Clear Lake. Huge interest of the tribal community out there. We are in the process, it's a Superfund site of remedy selection with US EPA, making sure that the tribal voices are accounted for as they discuss what is going to be a long-term plan to remediate this mine. At the Bully Hill Rising Star Mines, we're working with the trustee to implement projects to stabilize the site with remaining settlement funds. We're continuing to participate in public processes, evaluate potential threats associated with the proposed reopening of the Idaho, Maryland mine, continue ranking mine sites using the water quality threat prioritization scheme that Kate Berger, the program manager here, was instrumental in developing, and propose on conducting 25 site assessment compliance, permit development, and construction inspections of mine facilities that pose a threat to water quality. Cannabis program. So the Central Valley Water Board's cannabis regulatory program, we regulate waste discharges associated with cannabis cultivation consistent with state policy. This past year, they enrolled 157 cultivators. I'll take just a minute to let you know that there is a very healthy competition between us in Region 5 and the folks in Region 1. Those are kind of the two cannabis growing areas of the state to keep those enrollment numbers high. I think we edged in front of them, at least for the 21-22 year. We've been kind of diligently working at that. So it is a point of pride, all that this program has been able to do. Certainly, Region 1 also is very proud of their program. Healthy competition between those two to make sure that we enroll these sites, get them regulated, get them cleaned up. Conducted 56 enforcement inspections, 6 virtual region-wide outreach events, 2 enrollment initiatives, and oversaw 21 voluntary cleanup cases at illegal cultivation sites. All of which, streamlining, ensuring that we're doing more with less within this program. The program manager still relatively new. Jason is doing a fantastic job of achieving this. If you take a look at the graphic there, that's actually a view from a helicopter of a bunch of cannabis grow facilities there. Each one of those hoop houses is a cannabis growing facility. You see plants out in the open there as well. There's been a huge proliferation of these sites. Give a second on that. There you go. To make sure that cleanup and that those cultivation activities don't have an impact to water quality. In the upcoming year, the main priorities of this program are increase enrollments, pursue enforcement of those sites that pose the most egregious water quality threats, and that's completely consistent with the state or the strategic plan objectives, and to create efficiencies, improve workflow, and reduce backlog of historical sites. Next up, the Forest Activities Program. In 21-22, 287 inspections, including post-fire salvage logging and post-fire utility activities, executed grants and contracts to improve forest lands impacted by legacy logging, further capacity to accurately detect pesticides in remote forested watersheds. I spoke with you a little bit about that last year. It's a continuous sampling monitor that we want to make sure is fully accredited so we can use that to detect pesticide with greater accuracy. Build an online training and certification system for U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management staff as we work on our federal permit. And we engage with a SQL contractor to work and support a new permit for non-point source discharges in federal lands. There you see kind of some of the stuff that the Forest Activities Program does. That is a drinking water supply line that had to be rebuilt after a fire ripped through that particular area. So it's not just traditional timber harvest, it is everything under the sun that is being asked of that Forest Activities Program. Lots of legislative attention these past years. Angela Wilson, Program Manager, has been really adept at navigating all the changes to this program and the requests coming in. For 22-23, we continue to provide oversight of timber harvesting activities across federal and non-federal lands for compliance with the Timberland General Order. Internal and intra-agency coordination on veg management activities. So essentially building down those vegetation that have overgrown in areas, made these fires more severe, along with climate change. A lot of those activities are being, a lot is being asked of our forest management program. A lot is being asked of them to coordinate with entities like CAL FIRE, DWR, Natural Resources, State Water Board, local entities, federal partners, to make sure that those risks are ameliorated. And last but not least is the federal non-point source permit development, including tribal outreach, engagement with federal agency leadership as we try and bring our huge effort to get a federal non-point source permit for our region developed and approved by the board. Right, that was a lot. I'll give you a minute if you have any questions on all of those special permitting programs.
Just one quick question on the cannabis program, Patrick. Enrollment is up to 157 cultivators. And I know when we initially started out with this program, we were hardly getting any people to sign up. How do we relate this number to the progress that's been made in getting people enrolled?
Thankfully, that was 157 though this past year. I don't have the exact number, but the overall total is much higher than that. That's just what we got this past year. You know, the challenge with the cannabis program is the same as it was. Most counties in our region do not authorize cannabis cultivation, outdoor cannabis cultivation activities at all. So we have to work in those counties that do approve of cannabis cultivation to get our enrollment numbers up. Those include Yolo County, Nevada County, Lake County. And I know there's one more that I'm forgetting, but it's basically like 4 counties.
Calaveras or something?
Calaveras, I think they're back on a prohibition. They were the one that did the 180, where they said everybody can get a cannabis permit. Just kidding, nobody can get a cannabis permit. And that was an effort unto itself. You know, county decision making can often hinge on one. You know, the election of one county council person can change the entire landscape of whether this is permissible or not. And Calaveras was a case in point for that. But you know, we do continue enforcement efforts. We have staff that are working, you know, south of the region where there's not a lot of approved programs on, you know, deconfliction. Fresno County has no approved programs, so every outdoor cultivation site you see is an illegal cultivation site. You know, working with local law enforcement to make sure that if they pose a threat to water quality, we try and get to them is a pretty big challenge for that program.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick.
Absolutely. Right. So I'll move to these last 3 water quality programs: enforcement and cleanup. First, the biggest program that we've got, at least in terms of staff resources, they are spread out wide throughout all of the offices, nearly all the programs. A huge task for Carrie Holmes, the program manager. JJ is the executive sponsor for that. Really figuring out within NPDS, the discharge to land, stormwater, confined animal, timber harvest, site cleanup, and UST programs. They manage about 57 staff, not 57 personnel years, but 57 staff persons engaged with compliance enforcement, doing a huge amount of inspections. So 1,570 inspections of sites resulted in 414 enforcement actions over this past year. And you know, one of the things that they do is also to branch out and try and get engaged on other activities that aren't necessarily a traditional enforcement action. One of the success stories there was the cleanup of about 38,000 pounds of trash and debris from the riparian areas around Steelhead Creek. It's some of the enforcement staff that have helped make those cleanups possible. Picture you see there, that is kind of some of the things that are regulated by the stormwater program. That's a concrete washout basin, not built the way it's supposed to be built. You know, concrete washout is a good thing. Make sure you don't attract concrete or concrete dust all over the land, impact surface waters. This is not the right way to do it. You really want to protect groundwater while you're at it. So just an example of some of the sites that they come across within that program. And for the upcoming year, a lot of intra-office engagement on compliance issues and permit language during permit development is something that the compliance and enforcement program has taken on. We want to make sure that all the permits that come to the board have received some level of enforcement review in addition to the permitting team looking at it. So we do have enforcement permits when they get adopted. Implementation of the CV Solids Enforcement Task Force is kind of one of their major initiatives for this upcoming year. And also to support US EPA's EJ initiative, increased stormwater enrollment and enforcement, illegal dumping, and water quality impacts surrounding homeless encampments. All major concerns that the compliance and enforcement program will be taking on in this upcoming year. Next up is a site cleanup program. Site cleanup program, really a lot of what they do is oversee complete cleanup projects from the size of this one. You know, it looks like a PCE facility in a small kind of shopping center right there, to massive efforts like the Sacramento rail yards cleanup, largest brownfield site, you know, west of the Mississippi. So we conducted technical review of over 1,000 site investigation, remediation, or remedial design documents. 19 sites moved from investigation into active remediation, closed 34 sites, finding that they no longer pose a threat to water quality. And this is an interesting metric, removed over 15 million pounds of contaminated soil, soil gas, free product, including gasoline, diesel, solvents, etc., and contaminated groundwater from the environment. Really big milestone. It's kind of hard to even imagine how much that actually is. And then staff continue to identify sites eligible for grants through the site cleanup sub-account program. As you know, as with many things, the state is using all of its resources, whether it's the increased budget or programs like the site cleanup sub-account program to get money out to sites that need it. So our program manager and his team have been remarkable about outreach. Hey, if there's a site that qualifies for a grant program, get the grant application in their hand, show them how to apply for this grant, get the funds necessary, kind of help me, help you type of thing for these sites. The more grant funds that flow into these areas, the more sites to get cleaned up, the more we can lower the case count for the site cleanup program.
And Patrick, let me just say that this kind of program is my first ever exposure with working with the water board. I used to work for the city of Merced, and this was specifically the kinds of sites that I was given to coordinate with the water board. So this has been something that I kind of always keep an eye on, but I've never seen it where it was like measured in millions of pounds of product removed. And that is a big deal. And it sounds great. This project really affects a lot of people and water supplies and for municipalities. So anyways, I like this program. So I just want to tell you, I like this slide.
Absolutely. This program is I think a lot of what they do is at the forefront of engagement and outreach. Not many folks will visit their wastewater treatment plant, although personally I think everybody should, but not folks will visit that. But many people will see those cleanups in their communities. Many people will see that weird patch, grassy lawn that's been fenced in for years. Why hasn't anybody redeveloped that? Well, chances are there's groundwater impacts. Chances are there's something that we as a board can be doing to outreach about the public, about cleanup proposals, get grant funds into the hands of communities that are struggling with these issues, get those sites cleaned up, and get them, returned to productive use. And so for the upcoming year, this program is to continue to track the pounds of contamination removed from the environment, develop new measures to demonstrate the impact our work is having on water quality. A couple of things you've heard about have been in the news a lot. PFAS, monitor perfluorinated chemicals in groundwater within our region, and continue to evaluate groundwater impacts from 1,2,3 TCP, trichloropropane. A lot of these emerging constituents, the site cleanup program is on the forefront of that, from vapor intrusion, PFAS, all of these water quality issues. Really a lot of cutting edge work is being done by the site cleanup program in evaluating sites, understanding the threat that they pose to water quality. Identify and enroll underfunded projects and funding opportunities. And last but not least, by any means, proactively engage communities in cleanup plan development. I think you've seen a lot of that from this group over the past year. We've been asked to participate in online sessions talking with, City of Sacramento and concerned citizens on a site that they propose to use for an encampment for unhoused people. Talk about the environmental threats that are present there. There was issues in the backyards of some folks concerned about a cleanup action. We have to adapt and make sure that we provide the information about that site in the language that they need and in a language that's meaningful, in a way that communicates water quality threats in a plain language manner. So a lot of kudos to the cleanup program for taking those issues head on. UST program, really one of the most successful environmental programs, at least in my view, in state environmental history. This has cleaned up a huge number of leaking underground storage tanks. It helps that there used to be $1 million, it's now $1.5 million associated with every cleanup. There's a whole tax structure that supports these cleanup efforts, really cleverly conceived and very well executed by our technical staff that review these cases. 11 cases moved into active remediation. One of the things they do nearly every single year is review all the open cases for possible closure, figure out what needs to be done to close these open cases, and communicate very plainly with the people who own these sites. What do you need to do to get this thing, and we know this site's keeping you up at night. Here's what you got to do to close the case. And we closed 47 cases this year, finding that they no longer pose a threat to water quality. And for the upcoming year, continue to address priority cases, review all open cases for possible case closure, ensure that every open case receives at least one case review and written directive correspondence during the year, if that's feasible for a particular case. Again, constant contact, right? We want to make sure that there's not anybody who owns any of these sites that we want them to know that the state is watching. We want to make sure that they get a directive. Hey, what have you done this year? What can you do to continue to move that to closure? We update the path to closure fields and GeoTracker for all open cases so that all responsible parties are aware of the steps remaining for case closure. And just for what it's worth, any member of the public can know what needs to be done as well. GeoTracker is an awesome tool for doing that. I encourage everybody to kind of play around with the GeoTracker database, not the car, but the site. I think it's the first that pops up on Google, and you can see in your community what UST cases are still open, what need to be closed, and if you click on the open cases, it will tell you what needs to be done at these sites to close them, to get them to the point where they're no longer posing a threat to water quality. We know that's a tool that's used by the community quite a bit. Heck, if you buy a house in the state of California, your property disclosure actually probably mentions GeoTracker by name and says, yes, a GeoTracker site was done. These are the potential water quality impacts around your community that are identified in GeoTracker. And last but not least, continue to address community engagement and cleanup proposals and case closures, something that's required by law, but we also do quite a bit of in this program, trying to go beyond what the law requires. And that's it. That's the roundup for all of our programs. I'll pause here again, pull this down, and see if you have any other questions.
I'm always flabbergasted when I see the scope of the programs that you just summarized fairly quickly. It's amazing how much work the board staff gets done and the diversity of work that gets done, and engaging the community and working with other agencies. It's really commendable. So thanks for summarizing it so well.
Agreed. And I've taken copious notes. I plan on following up, Patrick. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, Patrick, I always appreciative of having the annual report provided to let us know how well our staff are doing on all of our varied 21 projects. I was glad to see that there's monies going into more funds to provided for the oil fields project. That's good news. Anytime our staff can get more money to help with any of these programs is always great. But I commend you and the staff for the excellent work. The priorities that you've laid out are definitely in line with what we expect, and we're ready to move forward with the new program year, and looking forward to having more things accomplished. But a great job by you and the staff. Thank you very much for the presentation.
I agree. It's a tremendous amount of work, and I really like the end of the year summary reports because it really helps us understand just kind of what a great agency we are. And And so, and I don't mean like, I mean, I'll take some of the credit because that's the kind of person that I am, but really, like, it makes me proud that the organization, how far we moved the state forward. So I love that. So thank you for the update, Patrick. And like I said earlier, from the very top to, you know, the person that helps in the smallest way, we're all moving it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick. Always, I think the depth and scope of what the water board does is so vast, and so it's a lot. We kind of cover a lot of areas, and your report is always, I think, a good indicator of where we've been and where we're going. So thank you so much, always, and the staff.
If I may add on to all the comments that has been made. So this is, yeah, is a great way of illustrate the amount of responsibility, amount of programs that are helping out the community. And we have staff that making a day-to-day decision to make those programs meet. And then we got the board members like ourselves where we make decisions on the monthly or bi-monthly decision to make any impact that we can make. And this is definitely a collectively effort from everyone, and there's definitely a lot of all of us involved, and I'm just proud to be a part of providing solution to move California forward. So thank you for all the work, Patrick and the staff. Appreciate all the help and all the work.
I'm glad to have you, your support for that. Absolutely.
Patrick. Oh, sorry, Mark.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say thank you for putting that together. It was very clear on where we are, where we were, and where we're going. And, just being with the board for just a short period of time and just working in my own little microcosm with, Denise on CV Salts, it's really nice to see where we fit with everybody else. And I just want to say thank you for sharing with, because now not only do I have the micro, I have the macro, and that's very beneficial. Thank you.
Okay, well, great summary, Patrick. Mindy, are there any interested persons wishing to comment on the year-end report?
Yes, Michael Garabedian with Placer County Tomorrow wishes to comment.
Okay. Mr. Garabedian, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think I'm unmuted. I'm going to very quickly go through a lot of the critical reasons that the industrial pretreatment program is vitally needed in the state. First of all, the state's too rapid in my view, movement towards direct potable reuse sewage water prodded by the legislature. Now, this started in 2009 when the State Water Board adopted a water recycling policy, which cobbled together a couple of earlier policies using a self-appointed stakeholder group that wouldn't let us go to their meetings. The two attorneys on that made a presentation to the Sacramento Bar, and I asked them if they looked at the industrial pretreatment program as part of that effort, and they said no. Now, it got the water thickened a great deal when Governor Brown did a reorganization, and he took the drinking water division out of health and put it under the water boards. And this is very, very critical responsibility. And now that you have, there are just a whole host of problems. Illegal dumping into sewer systems is chronic. Had a DA task force on that in LA. I imagine they still do. There are many potential dangers to the system, like Walkerton candidate, which an improper, wrong kind of material got into the well and contaminated the drinking water system and resulted in deaths. These are potential public health problems. So how did California get the pretreatment program? It was in a delegation from the US EPA in 1989, the same delegation of both the National Pollution Elimination, the NPDES program, you're renewing 5-month discharger permits, and industrial pretreatment with a strong admonition for public involvement in NPDES and a need to evaluate that, which we feel should be a priority of the state board. We're regretted not seeing public involvement on their list. They were took up at the recent Tahoe meeting. So the regional boards are in a critical position, but when I brought up pretreatment and tried to find out if it had been on a state water board agenda, apparently it hasn't been. And one state, fairly new staff person at that level said, the regional boards are doing it. So here we have the dilemma of how to, add this relatively new program to the importance of your responsibilities. I know the staff is certainly considering it when they're looking at general orders and things like that. But it is a remarkably critical one to human health directly because of that reorganization. And look forward to working on industrial pretreatment with you as much as I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I think they will be addressed under a variety of our programs, primarily the NIPTES program, I believe. So you'll be hearing much more about that, I'm sure. Was that the only comment from the public, Mindy?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thanks again, Patrick. That was really informative. I'm kind of back to feeling like we're drinking from a fire hose when I hear all that information in such a concise presentation. So I'll be following up with you on a few questions as well. Moving on to agenda item 10, I guess I have a question before we jump into that. Do you have approximation on the time required for this item?
Should be about 15 minutes. I don't expect it to be much longer than that.
Okay. Unless somebody needs to balance the books or take a bio break, I think we can just move ahead with this item. Okay, so this agenda item 10 addresses the general waste discharge requirements for maintenance dredging operations, consideration of new general waste discharge requirements. At this time, the board will consider these new requirements. This proceeding will be conducted in accordance with the notice of public hearing and meeting procedures published with the meeting agenda. At this time, evidence should be introduced on whether the proposed action should be taken. All persons expecting to testify, raise your right hand and take the following oath. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth? If so, answer, I do. Please state your name, address, affiliation, and whether you have taken the oath before testifying. Following the staff presentation, interested persons will be allowed 3 minutes each to address the board, and a timer will be used. And does council have any legal issues to discuss at this time?
No issues.
Thanks, Jessica. So we will now begin the staff presentation.
Thank you so much. Let me get this going for you. Just 1 second.
I also have it, Stephanie, if you need any help.
Okay. I think I should be okay. Hopefully it's up on the screen for everybody. Okay.
No, it's not
No,
yet.
it's not. Oh, I know what I need to do. Hold on. I need to share my screen. Oh my goodness.
Not good.
Let's see. Actually, Jean, did you want to go ahead and run this for me? That might be easier.
Gene, before you do that, can you also co-host Adam, please? Somehow he lost his co-host duty.
Sure.
Thank you.
There you go, Adam, and here you go, Stephanie.
All right, perfect. Wait till it shows up. Okay. Good morning, Chair Bradford and members of the board. My name is Stephanie Tadlock. I'm the Senior Environmental Scientist Supervisor for the 401 Water Quality Certification and Dredging Unit, and I have taken the oath. Today, my presentation discusses the general order for maintenance dredging projects before you today for your consideration and approval. And next slide, please. In this presentation, I will explain what dredging is exactly and why it is important for us to regulate for water quality purposes. I will explain how dredging operations and placement activities are regulated and inform you dredging general orders that are currently being used for dredging projects. Also, what the new order's intended coverage includes. I will explain the different enrollment categories that have been developed for the general order based on risk potential that are used to determine eligibility for coverage. I will provide a brief summary of the order and finally discuss internal technical staff and public participation that occurred. There will be time to answer any questions you may have at the conclusion of my presentation. Next slide, please. Oh, this is the wrong one. It should be in the folder.
That was copied over this morning.
Sorry about that.
I'll go look for it really quick.
Okay. My apologies.
Oh, no worries. This just take a second.
Sure. That's the one. Yep.
Okay.
And we're on slide 3.
Good
I guess technical difficulties for being the last item, I suppose.
Well, we have good internet.
That looks better. Okay, and let's continue. Sorry about that. Before we discuss the order's details, I think it would be prudent to discuss this subject at the general order before you today. Dredging. What is dredging? With access to technology and a few keystrokes, I pulled up the Google definition of dredging and the definitions relevant to this discussion. The definition I found on Google was to clean out a bed of a harbor, river, or other area of water by scooping out mud, weeds, and rubbish with a dredge. Worded differently, to bring up or clear something from a river, harbor, or other area of water with a dredge. As a simple definition, yes, but what is dredging? How is it different from soil excavation? Is it dredging only when there's water present? What about when the project is drained? The project site is drained. What about seasonal inundations? Dredging is, more simply put, movement, placement, or removal of material that may have over time and deposition accumulated constituents of potential concern or may have elevated concentrations of naturally occurring substances that may have the potential to negatively impact water quality. Dredged material may be located at the bottom of a permanent or temporary feature, a man-made or natural water body, or on the bottoms, banks, or shores of such water bodies. As sand and silt washes downstream, sedimentation gradually fills channels and harbors. This material must be periodically removed by dredging. These accumulated materials may be removed by any means, including excavation, and it could either be wet, dry, or dewatered material. Next slide, please. There are 2 common types of dredging operations. The first and least impactful to water quality is hydraulic dredging, as shown on the left-hand picture. This is where material is pumped through a sealed pipeline and transported to a processing site where it's sifted and sorted. Hydraulic dredges are cost-effective, more mobile, and highly versatile and suitable for challenging conditions where dredging needs to take place. This form of dredging relies on the creation of a slurry material, which is a liquidized mixture of rock, dirt, and gravel. This material is then placed into a sorting area. The most common type of hydraulic dredging is suction dredging, which operates essentially as a small high-powered vacuum that works underwater. The photo on the upper left that you see is an example of hydraulic dredging equipment. As you can see, it's smaller in size, and its mobile design allows it to be more commonly used in dredging operations we see in our area. The second type of dredging operation is mechanical dredging. Mechanical dredging involves the use of an excavator or other type of heavy equipment, usually situated on a barge or on the water's edge, to dig out the bed of the body of water and remove the sediment using a stationary, bucket-oriented machine that scoops the desired sediment before it's transported. The sediment is then hauled away for disposal or reuse. Typical types of mechanical dredging are bucket dredging, grab dredging, as seen in the photo here on the lower right, and backhoe dredging. Mechanical dredging is best suited for environments that have a large enough work area that will support operating an excavator or other large operational machine to extract, dispose, and scoop materials in a rapid manner. Next slide, please. Dredging activities do not stop at extraction. Once you have the scooped materials or slurry material, what do you do with it? The other half of dredging involves dredge material placement and potential reuse of dredged material. In the Central Valley region, and especially in the Delta, our main focus of dredge regulation is on placement and reuse, because dredged material in the Central Valley is rarely, if ever, discharged back to surface waters. In the Central Valley region, 99% of dredging involves upland placement without any discharge of either dredged material to surface waters. Generally, the only time discharge to surface water occurs is when water is discharged from settling ponds. The type of placement site depends on the type of dredging that occurs. We're looking to expand our regulation of what is called unconfined placement, which could occur at aquatic sites, nearby or close to aquatic sites, or in upland areas that are protected from re-entering the water source. These locations will be discussed more later when we discuss the risk level of each site pertaining to the order's requirements. Next slide, please. One of the most important aspects of dredging placement that has become widely used is how it is disposed of or how it can be reused. Although some dredged material can have constituent composition that make it unsuitable for beneficial reuse, most dredged material is suitable and as such represents a vital resource for a wide range of near-site applications considered beneficial for that area. For dredging projects that have been authorized by the Central Valley region, reuse has become common in upland areas to repair levee deficiencies, used in the Delta to assist in reversing island subsidence, creation of wetland habitat also in the Delta, and as foundational material for future construction activities. We encourage reuse not only for its applications, but also because moving material out of placement sites creates capacity for future dredge placement and reduces the need to discharge water from these sites. The photographs here are a before and after of just one beneficial reuse of dredge materials. This was used in reducing the island subsisting in the Delta area and also the creation of wetland habitat. Next slide, please. Now that dredging has been defined and described for context, the next question about dredging, especially when it comes to our region, is our regulatory authority. What exactly do we regulate? How do we regulate it? How we have defined dredging gives us the justification to regulate material that may pose a water quality threat regardless of where it is found and approve of how it's handled or disposed of. Dredging material has the potential to contain any number of substances that may cause problems to water quality, even when placement of material is in upland areas. These substances may not be mobilized until the material is distributed or oxidized in the upland environment. Constituents in dredged material may leach into groundwater, may be subject to erosion, may pose a threat as dust may be taken up into the food chain by plants. The good news is that most dredged material is not too bad and can be usually be classified as inert waste, which is material that's considered non-hazardous and doesn't contain waste that would negatively impact water quality or the environment. Now, how is dredging regulated? In the Central Valley region, most dredged material is placed upland if it is categorized as an inert waste or waste that's considered inert in a specific location that it's placed that would have no connectivity with any existing water resources such as groundwater. Most of the work is done to determine appropriate placement, and disposal methods involves examining the suitability of the placement areas with respect to characteristics of the dredged material. Each site is different, each material pulled is different. The requirements we impose for regulating dredging and placement will vary based on the location of the sediment extraction and the composition of the material that's been extracted. Next slide, please. There are currently 6 waste discharge requirements that cover minor discharges that we utilize today. Projects that require a 401 water quality certification under the Clean Water Act for dredging operation activities, maintenance dredging activities that occur with non-jurisdictional waters of the state, a waiver of waste discharge requirements for placement of discharges that pose low threat to surface or groundwater quality, maintenance dredging operations within the Stockton and Sacramento deep water ship channels that are performed either by port authorities or the Department of Water Resources, maintenance dredging within the San Joaquin Delta, and lastly, we have a memorandum of understanding with the United States Army Corps of Engineers for their regular maintenance dredging of the Stockton and deep water ship channels. These existing waste discharge requirements do not address coverage for needs for maintenance dredging operations outside of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta boundaries. These operations include lake dock dredging, irrigation canal maintenance, and pond maintenance. Due to the prevalence of activities requiring regulation that occur outside of the Delta, over the previous many years, we've taken reporting and data collected from Delta activities and expanded those opportunities outside of the Delta and further into the broader Sacramento and San Joaquin valleys to provide coverage under this order. Next slide, please. After research and development of standards consistent with our 3 basin plans, the proposed general order would replace the orders authorizing maintenance dredging activities within both deep water ship channels that are operated by the Department of Water Resources and port authorities, as well as any maintenance dredging activities in the Delta. This will also provide further authorization for dredging operations and placement outside of the Delta. It will encompass all maintenance dredging operations within the Sacramento, San Joaquin, and Tulare Lake basins. However, due to the existing memorandum of understanding with the Army Corps of Engineers, we have ongoing data collection, and this memorandum would remain in place and not be included as part of the general order before you today. Non-maintenance dredging activities will continue to use the existing applicable orders as they were previously adopted. Next slide, please. Dischargers conducting maintenance dredging activities within the Sacramento River, San Joaquin River, and Tulare Lake basins may qualify to receive authorization for coverage under the new order. It will act as a waste discharge requirements for only maintenance dredging activities that restore or maintain a previously permitted or achieved design depth or an operational depth, and they may require additional coverage under the Clean Water Act. These particular projects include operations that either contain or release water back to nearby surface water bodies. Next slide, please. This general order categorizes dredging operations based on a risk analysis on a project-by-project basis of dredging material placement methodology and location proposals. The following 3 categories are used to prescribe pre-project sampling, project site monitoring, and restrictions, and are determined by the level of risk the sediment runoff has of returning to its original water source. The first category, Category 1, has the highest risk of return. These areas include placement at a site where high potential for runoff to discharge into surface water or groundwater may occur. Category 2, projects with a possible risk of return include placement at a site with a potential but not a guarantee of return for all runoff discharged to surface water and or groundwater. And finally, Category 3, these are sites that have the lowest risk of return. These include placement at a site that has a curbed or near impervious surface or otherwise lacks connectivity to any waters of the state. These areas are described as having near permeable surface area that has a very low risk of opportunity to percolate through the surface of any wetted or dried material that surface has accumulated. Next slide, please. The following few slides further describes each category for enrollment based on its location and risk level. Each category is based on the risk the placement has of returning to the source water. The placement projects with the highest risk would qualify for Category 1, which would be a site that maintains and manages its sediment adjacent to a water body. This category includes discharging decant water back into the water body. Now, decant water is water that's separated from the removed sludge material through either a sandpipe or pump outlet. This is shown in the diagram that's on your upper right-hand side of the slide. The dredge material is placed and the sediment is allowed to settle out, leaving two layers, the sediment and the water. The leftover water after settling is considered decant water. As shown in the lower left picture, the pipe is discharging decant water back into an area that's protected with a turbidity curtain to prevent increases in turbidity in the greater water body. A turbidity curtain is a very common best management practice that reduces or contains any change in turbidity during any project activities. Next slide, please. Category 2 consists of placement sites that have the potential for water to return to a water source, though return is not guaranteed to occur. In these sites, no water body is located nearby, and dewatering may occur through evaporation or may possibly infiltrate into groundwater. These placement sites are shown in example sites on the slide here. You'll notice that the sites are contained, but they do have the potential of return to groundwater, which we do our best to protect during dredging placement activities. Next slide, please. Finally, Category 3 placement sites pose the lowest risk of return to a water source. These sites have a curved and near impervious surface, such as a parking lot or an enclosed upland area, where it lacks connectivities to any waters of the state. These are placement on sites that have a very high containment capability, where the dredge materials will not seep into or flow into groundwater or surface water, with appropriate placement location determination and best management practices implemented. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, I'll briefly describe the different requirements within the dredging general order. The order will include the following: a description of the requirements to conduct and enrollee submittal of pre-dredge sediment analysis, submittal of monitoring plans for both chosen dredge and placement sites, ongoing monitoring at both placement sites, discharge area, and the effluent discharge areas, and ongoing receiving water and other reporting requirements to be submitted while dredging activities are taking place. Next slide, please. Pre-dredge testing is based on the operations enrollment category. Placement sites are at the highest risk of return and would fall within the first category. The tests required for Category 1 sites would be a waste extraction test, a modified sediment suspension assessment, or an elutria test, and a metals analysis on representative sediment core samples to determine the potential impacts to groundwater and surface water associated with any dredging spoils. This will also ensure the sediment is being placed is not contaminated or does not meet the definition of any hazard waste. For Category 2, these projects do not have or have a lower potential to discharge to surface water. So there are only requirements to analyze runoff impacts through the elutria test and analyze soils and analyze metals in the sediment that's being placed. Finally, the lowest risk projects in Category 3 have no hydrologic connectivity or hydraulic connectivity. So they will only require metals testing analysis. It's noted in the order that all screening limit values for solids are based on the United States Environmental Protection Agency's preliminary remediation goals for ecological or residential use, or from a combination of water quality objectives from the California Toxics Rule, the 3 basin plans, and identification of other constituents and pollutants of concern within our region. Next slide, please. Next, the order outlines all specific dredge and placement site monitoring requirements. Dredge site monitoring includes up and downstream sampling for general parameters on a daily basis, and would include the general sampling as required regularly required under a Section 401 water quality certification, which would include regular testing for dissolved oxygen, pH, temperature, and turbidity exceedances. When placement of dredge materials begins, monitoring activities are required to begin immediately after sediment placement and conclude when the sediment placement site dries out. Daily and weekly compliance monitoring is also required to ensure that placement site capacity is maintained and reduces the possibility that the placement site would become a future nuisance source. Next slide, please. Receiving water limits are also established in the general order. Sampling to determine compliance is required to be conducted up and downstream of the runoff discharge point to determine its compliance with receiving water limits in the area. Daily sampling for general parameters and weekly sampling for suspended solids or any constituents of concern is also required. Constituents of concern and sample frequency will be further outlined in authorizations under the new general order on a case-by-case basis. For each project review prior to authorization, constituents of concern specific to the proposed dredging area would be determined following a review of the pre-dredge sediment analysis for constituents that exceeded any screening values in the area. Effluent monitoring will be conducted at the runoff discharge point and sampled at the same frequency and parameters as all receiving water. These monitoring requirements will provide data and establish if dredge placement site runoff is contributing to any observed exceedances of any receiving water limits. Next slide, please. The reporting requirements included in the general order include both notification of activity that would be occurring and regular monitoring of the dredge material placement area. The enrollee is required to notify the board at least 7 days prior to dredging placement and submit a notice of completion within 30 days following the completion of dredging placement and any dewatering that may have been implemented as a result of the dredging placement location or any operational situation. Monthly monitoring reports are required to report active dredging and discharge spoils, and annually, a detailed total volume of dredge materials must be submitted prior to September 1st each year for operations tracking in our databases after the dredging operational work window ends and dredging activities conclude. Next slide, please. During the development of the general order, we provided opportunity for internal review and public comment on multiple occasions. Prior to circulating the tentative order to the public, we solicited comments from the Region 5 Fresno and Reading offices. Staff with expertise in dredging and NPDES permitted projects provided comments and suggestions in January of 2022. The tentative general order was first circulated to the public for review from April 6th through May 6th of this year. We received one public comment from Tyson Fulmer of AWR Corporation prior to the close of the public comment period. We held a workshopping meeting with Mr. Fulmer and his colleague, Steve Mickelson, where we were able to discuss their comments and create a more robust order that would make sense. This allowed staff to incorporate feedback from members of the public and stakeholders who have been active in dredging operations and provided comments that made sense from the enrollee's perspective. Once the suggestions were incorporated, a second public circulation was initiated on June 15th and concluded on July 15th of this year. We received no additional comments during the second public review period. Next slide, please. In conclusion, staff recommends the board adopt the general order for maintenance dredging projects. Next slide, please. Thank you for your consideration of this general order. I request that this presentation is entered into the record. This concludes my presentation. Staff and management are available for any questions you may have at this time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And again, I thought it was important to put this agenda item in front of the board, even though we've had a lot of comments received on it, because this has been about what, 10, 15 years in the making.
About that, yeah.
Particular permit. So extraordinary amount of effort. I will also thank, I believe Nick White is still there on the call. He transferred units and was still able to come in for this presentation because I think it represents a pretty big milestone. And thanks to Stephanie and Nick, especially for getting this one across the line.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
kind of curious when you had those public comment periods, was there a lot of give and take and input the concerned parties?
When we received the comments, the base comment was, this is a great start. Here's how we can improve it.
Right.
So there were most of the comments we felt after discussing it with staff, discussing it with management, that they would actually benefit and help allow us to regulate as we intend to and as we'd like to for this particular order.
Good.
So give, not necessarily, but we were able to make a much more solid order.
Good.
I have, so Stephanie, I want to tell you that was a great presentation.
Thank you.
And I liked the way you started with the definition, right? Like what people Google, because that's what I would have done, right?
Yep.
And the differences between what I thought I knew and what you explained was really good. So that was excellent. I talked about how I don't have a lot of technical background, or at least I didn't, and on this issue I don't. But this was a great way to start because you acknowledge that people have these preconceived ideas of what we think we know. And then you moved us over to the technical arena and why the differences matter. So that was a really good tactic. So I just want to tell you that it was informative and good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, and we should probably ask Mindy now if there are any interested parties who wish to comment on this item.
No, I do not have any.
Okay, good. Are there any closing remarks? I think everybody really appreciated that presentation, Stephanie. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. And your recommendation, I assume, Patrick, will be to approve this.
Absolutely. My recommendation is to approve the permit.
So the hearing is closed, and barring any further deliberation or discussion, I think we can move to adopt the new general waste discharge requirements. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I second it.
Thank you, Nick and Alina. And Mindy, could you take the roll call?
Board Member Brar,
Yes.
Board Member Ramirez,
Yes.
Board Member Yang,
Yes.
Board Member Abdus,
Yes.
Board Member Lee Reader,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kadara,
Yes.
and Chair Bradford.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Stephanie for her great presentation. As Carmen said, it was very comprehensive and provided a lot of information that was educational for me as well. So it was a great report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kadar. I appreciate that.
Okay. With that agenda item completed, I believe that concludes the meeting. Am I missing anything here, Patrick? I know we've got a short closed session to adjourn to.
It's at your election. It's an issue that doesn't require board attention, but it's a short update for ongoing litigation if the board chooses.
Sure.
Do we have a link for that closed session? Well, for those that don't know where it is, Mindy, would you forward it over?
Yes, I'll send it over right now. Give me just a
Thank you.
minute.
Thank you.
And in the closed session, we will be discussing F under the litigation, which is the Valley Water Management Company case. It shouldn't take long.
Thanks to everybody. Reconvene over there.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry, so am I ending the meeting or waiting for you to return?
No, we're ending this meeting. We're going to reconvene on a different link for the closed session.
Very good. I will end the stream and recording.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
And the email just went, so check your emails if you need the closed session link.
Okay, thanks.
Give me a minute. I need to go start it. I'll be right back.
Okay,
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
bye-bye.